The wife. He left at home, walked in last, and the room forgot he existed. He told her to stay home. He took another woman to the biggest night of his life. He thought he'd buried his wife under 7 years of silence and a black credit card. But at 9:47 that night, a woman in a midnight gown stopped at the top of a marble staircase, and 300 of the most powerful people in the country turned their heads at the same time. Marcus Voss forgot how to breathe, because the woman he had called invisible for 7 years had just walked into his world, and everyone in that ballroom knew her name before he did. Before we go any further, if you're watching from New York, from London, from Manila, from Sao Paulo, from Lagos, from a small town nobody talks about, drop the name of your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels tonight. Hit that like button. Stay with me until the very last line, because what Elena Voss does in the next 2 hours will make you question every quiet woman you've ever underestimated. Let's begin. The text came in at 5:42 p.m. Don't wait up. Big night. Won't be home. Elena Voss read it twice, not because she didn't understand it the first time, but because she wanted to be sure she wasn't imagining the period at the end. Marcus never used periods in text to her. He used them for lawyers, for board members, for the people he wanted to keep at arm's length. For his wife of 7 years, he usually didn't bother punctuating at all. Tonight he'd bothered. She set the phone face down on the marble kitchen island and walked to the window. The penthouse looked out over the East River, and the water had that cold, flat, pre-winter gray that made Manhattan feel like a photograph of itself. Somewhere below, in the traffic crawling along the FDR, her husband was in the back of a black car with a 24-year-old Brazilian model named Paloma, and he thought nobody would notice. He was wrong about that. He was wrong about a lot of things. Elena poured herself a glass of water. Not wine. She had a feeling she was going to want her head clear tonight. The Ashbury Gala was the kind of event that didn't bother having a website. If you needed the address, you weren't invited. Every year, in the second week of November, 300 of the most dangerous men in America and their carefully chosen companions put on tailored black and walked into a restored Beaux-Arts ballroom on East 62nd Street to drink champagne that cost more than most cars and pretend they weren't taking each other's measure. Hedge fund kings, senators who still had teeth, real money. Old money. The kind of new money that had already bought its way into being old. A handful of foreign names that didn't make any of the Forbes lists because Forbes didn't know where to look. Marcus had been trying to get on the list for 6 years. This year, they'd finally let him in. Elena knew this because she'd helped him get there. She just hadn't told him that. Okay, she went upstairs. The closet Marcus had designed for her when they'd moved in. He'd been so proud of it, he'd shown it off to his mother like it was a gift to the Louvre. Was the size of a small apartment. 600 square feet of backlit glass and rotating shoe carousels and cashmere stacked by color. Most of it she'd never worn. Marcus bought her clothes the way some men bought wives' stocks, as a way of saying, look what I can afford. She'd stopped resisting years ago. It had been easier to let him dress the doll than to explain that she'd once had closets that made this one look like a coat check. She walked past all of it, past the racks of pale pinks and beiges and powder blues Marcus had chosen because he thought they made her look soft, past the pearls and the tennis bracelet and the diamond studs he gave her every anniversary as if he were renewing a subscription. At the back of the closet, behind a false wall she'd installed herself the week they moved in. She'd told the contractor she wanted a safe, and she'd paid him in cash, and she'd done the last of the work herself. There was a second door. She pressed her thumb to a plate that read her print, and the door opened. Inside, one dress, one pair of shoes, one small matte black velvet box, one Italian passport in a name that wasn't Voss, a phone that had never been turned on in this apartment, and a photograph of a man with silver hair and dark eyes standing on a terrace in Palermo holding a little girl on his hip. Elena took the dress down off the hanger. It was midnight black with no embellishment at all. No sequins, no lace, no cutouts. It had been cut for her in Milan the winter she'd turned 23, by a woman who had not asked her name and had not needed to, because the man who'd sent her had already paid for silence. It was the dress she was supposed to have worn to her own engagement party in a different life. A life she'd walked away from with 2 suitcases and a new last name. She'd kept it for 7 years. She hadn't been sure why. Now she was sure. She laid the dress on the bed. She opened the velvet box. Inside was a ring. Not a wedding ring. She'd left that one in a drawer in Rome. But a signet, heavy gold, engraved with a crest that didn't appear in any book of European heraldry because the family who wore it had never wanted to be in any book. She slid it onto the middle finger of her right hand. It fit like she'd never taken it off. The phone in the box, when she turned it on, had one number saved. She stared at it for a long moment. Her thumb hovered. She dialed. It rang once. A man's voice answered, rough and careful, in Italian. Principessa. Uncle Sal, she said in English, because she wanted this to feel like work and not family. It's time. A pause on the other end, long enough that she could hear a dog barking in the background, and a woman's voice calling someone in for dinner. Domestic sounds. The sounds of a man who had retired or pretended to. You're sure, Bambina? I'm sure. Tonight? Tonight. Another pause. Then a soft sound. Half laugh, half sigh. That she remembered from when she was 8 years old, and he'd caught her trying to steal cannoli from her father's kitchen. Your father, Sal said, told me this day would come. He told me you would know when. He said the only thing I had to do was answer the phone. You're answering the phone. I'm answering the phone. She heard him stand up, heard a chair scrape on a tile floor, heard the dog bark again, closer. What do you need? Elena closed her eyes. She'd rehearsed this quietly, in the back of her head, for most of the last month. Since the morning she'd found the memo in Marcus's home office. Since she'd realized what was coming for him. Since she'd realized that the men moving against her husband were men she knew by name. 3 things, she said. I need Ashbury confirmed for tonight. I need Donnelly to stand down by 10 p.m., and I need the Serrano paper on the table before midnight, or it doesn't exist anymore. Sal exhaled. Elena. I know. Elena, if I make these calls, you come back. You understand me? You come back. There is no half. There is no just this once. I know. Your father. I know, Uncle Sal. Her voice didn't shake, but something in her chest did for one bad second. She pressed her hand flat against the dress on the bed, and the second passed. I know what I'm doing. You're sure this man is worth it? She almost laughed. No, she said, but I am. There was a long silence. Then Sal said, in Italian, the old way, the way her father used to say it. Allora, comandi, principessa. Then give the order, princess. Elena gave the order, then she hung up the phone, put it back in the box, and went to run a bath. Tell me, Marcus Voss was in the back of the Bentley, one hand on Paloma's thigh, one hand on his phone, and he was not thinking about his wife. He was thinking about Richard Ashbury. Specifically, he was thinking about the way Richard Ashbury had said, at the Aspen conference in March, Marcus, I like you. You've got appetite. But appetite isn't the same as pedigree. Come see me in November and we'll see what you're actually made of. Marcus had smiled that night and said something charming, and then he'd gone back to his room and broken a rocks glass against the wall of the shower. 8 months. 8 months of positioning. 8 months of the right dinners and the right donations and the right carefully leaked stories in the right financial press. He'd ghost-written an op-ed about the new American industrial class for a magazine Ashbury's wife sat on the board of. He'd bought a painting at a charity auction for a price that had made his accountant weep, because he'd known Ashbury would be watching the bidding. And tonight, finally, the invitation. Heavy cream cardstock, hand-delivered by a courier in a suit that probably cost more than the courier made in a month. Mr. Marcus Voss. +1. +1. He hadn't even hesitated. He'd told his assistant to book Paloma. He told Elena not to wait up, because Elena, his Elena, soft and sweet and quiet and American pretty in a way that didn't threaten anyone, was not a +1 for a room like Ashbury's. Elena was for Sunday dinners with his mother. Elena was for the framed Christmas card. Elena was the woman who made the house feel like a house and didn't ask questions about the money. She was a beautiful piece of furniture, and he loved her. He did, in his own way. He told himself he did. But she was not equipment for a night like tonight. Paloma was equipment. Paloma turned heads. Paloma made every man in the room wonder what Marcus Voss had done to deserve her, and wonder was the first ingredient in respect. "Baby," Paloma said, in her heavy, lazy accent, "you are squeezing my leg too hard." "Sorry," Marcus said. He wasn't sorry. He didn't loosen his grip. The Bentley turned onto 62nd. The sidewalk was already thick with photographers. Not the TMZ kind, the other kind. The ones with long lenses and nobody to answer to. The ones that took pictures that never ran anywhere but still found their way into the right inboxes. Marcus saw Richard Ashbury's car 2 spots ahead of them. He saw the doorman, a man in full livery, gloves and all, like something out of a 1912 dream of America, bow slightly as Ashbury got out. "This is it," Marcus said, more to himself than to Paloma. "Try not to come in your suit, darling," Paloma said. She checked her lipstick in a compact. Marcus didn't laugh. The ballroom was already full when they arrived, and Marcus, for the first time in a long time, felt the full weight of being the newest man in a room. He'd expected the money. The money didn't surprise him. He had money. What surprised him was the quiet. Rooms like this, in his experience, buzzed. Men in good suits always buzzed, always had something to prove. This room didn't buzz. This room murmured. The conversations were low, unhurried, and the laughter when it came was short and private and didn't invite anyone else in. He recognized a former Secretary of the Treasury by the bar, a senator from Texas he'd donated to in the last cycle. The CEO of a bank so old its name was carved into marble over a doorway on Wall Street. A woman in emerald who, he was fairly sure, owned most of the natural gas in a country he couldn't have found on a map. And at the center of it, under the chandelier holding a glass of something clear with ice, was Richard Ashbury. Ashbury was 74. He was not a large man. He had the kind of face that had been handsome once and had weathered into something better than handsome, into interesting, into used, into don't lie to me. He was talking to 2 men Marcus didn't recognize, and one of them was laughing and the other was not. Marcus took a breath. He steered Paloma by the small of her back. "Richard," he said, and his voice came out exactly as he'd practiced it. Warm, easy, the voice of a man who belonged here. "You actually invited me. I was starting to think it was a clerical error." Ashbury turned. He took Marcus in. His eyes flicked briefly to Paloma, and then came back to Marcus. And if there was anything in them, Marcus couldn't read it. "Marcus," Ashbury said, "you made it. I made it. This is—" "Paloma," Paloma said, extending a hand. "Enchanted." Ashbury took the hand, held it for exactly the right amount of time, released it. "Enchanted," he said. It was the flattest word Marcus had ever heard. There was a small silence. Marcus, who had not expected a small silence, reached for the nearest thing to fill it. "Quite a turnout," he said. Ashbury said. "I was saying to Paloma in the car, I don't think I've been in a room with this much history since—" "Marcus," Ashbury said, gently, "go enjoy yourself. We'll talk later." It was the kindest dismissal Marcus had ever received. It was also, unmistakably, a dismissal. He felt his face try to do 2 things at once. He got it under control. "Of course," he said. "Of course. Later." Ashbury was already turning back to the 2 men. Marcus walked Paloma to the bar. His ears were ringing a little. "He doesn't like me," he said under his breath. "He doesn't know you," Paloma said. She shrugged. "Buy me a drink." Marcus bought her a drink, and another. And in the next 20 minutes, he really did try, to work the room. He shook 3 hands that should have meant something. He dropped 2 names that should have opened 2 doors. He got, in return, polite eyes and polite nods and polite nothing. Nobody was rude to him. Nobody needed to be. The room simply did not know who he was, and it did not especially want to find out. By 9:30, Marcus Voss, who had begun the evening believing he was about to be made, was standing near a marble column with a half-full glass in his hand, watching his date flirt with a Brazilian ambassador, and realizing in a slow, awful way that he had been invited tonight for a reason that had nothing to do with him. He just couldn't figure out what the reason was. At 9:46, the quality of the room changed. Marcus felt it before he understood it. It was like a pressure drop before a storm, a hush that didn't exist yet but that his body registered anyway. Heads lifted. Conversation stalled mid-sentence. A waiter with a tray of champagne flutes stopped walking and just stood there, looking up at the staircase like a man who'd forgotten where he was going. Marcus turned, and at the top of the marble staircase, one hand resting lightly on the banister, a woman in a midnight black gown was standing there, not moving, letting the room see her. For one whole second, Marcus thought, "My God, she looks like Elena." For the next second, he thought, "That's a strange trick of the light." For the third second, he thought nothing, because his brain had gone completely quiet, the way it did on the rare occasions when reality contradicted itself so completely that his entire internal filing system crashed. The woman at the top of the stairs was Elena. She was his wife, except she wasn't, because his wife did not walk like that. His wife did not wear her hair like that, pulled back severely, a single silver pin at the nape of her neck, no jewelry at her ears or her throat, none of the softness she always wore. His wife did not stand still at the top of a staircase and wait for a room to find her. His wife did not have that exact expression on her face, an expression Marcus had never, in 7 years, seen her wear. It was the expression of someone who had been in this kind of room before, many times, and who, on the way in, had looked at every single person present and decided privately how she would deal with each of them if they crossed her. Marcus tried to say her name. No sound came out. Beside him, Paloma, who had turned when he turned, said softly, "Who is that?" A man's voice behind Marcus, someone he didn't know, said just as softly, in what sounded like disbelief, "Mother of God." And then, at the far side of the room, Richard Ashbury. Richard Ashbury, who had not looked up from his own conversation for Marcus Voss and his Brazilian model, set down his glass. He set it down, and he straightened his jacket, and he walked across his own ballroom in front of his own guests to the foot of the staircase. He waited there. The woman in the black dress, Marcus's wife, came down the stairs. She did not hurry, she did not glide. She walked like a woman who had been told, a long time ago, that the room would wait, and who had never, in her life, been proven wrong. At the bottom of the stairs, Ashbury extended his hand. She took it, lightly, formally, and then Marcus's glass was shaking in his hand. He didn't remember when it had started shaking. Then Richard Ashbury, the 74-year-old man who had built one of the largest private fortunes on the eastern seaboard, the man who chose presidents for sport, the man whose dismissal 20 minutes ago had made Marcus feel like a stain on a tablecloth. Richard Ashbury bent and kissed the back of her hand and said something to her in a low voice that made her smile. It was not a smile Marcus recognized. It was not a smile he had ever, in 7 years of marriage, been given. The room, after that, did a thing Marcus had never seen a room do. It rearranged itself around her. She didn't move. She stood at the foot of the stairs, her hand loosely in Ashbury's, and people came to her. Not in a stampede. Nothing so vulgar. They came in ones and twos the way courtiers approach a throne. A nod to Ashbury first, then a pause, then a quiet word to Elena, then a slight, almost imperceptible bow of the head, and a withdrawal. The Emerald Woman. The bank CEO. A tall man in a charcoal suit whose face Marcus knew from half a dozen magazine covers and could not, at this exact moment, name. A Japanese gentleman in his 80s who took Elena's hand in both of his and held it for a long time, and whose eyes, when they lifted to her face, were wet. Marcus realized his mouth was open. He closed it. "Baby," Paloma hissed, low and urgent. "Who is she? Why is everyone—" "Shut up," Marcus said. He didn't mean to say it. It came out anyway. "Shut up, Paloma. Just shut up for a second." Paloma blinked at him. Then she looked at Elena, then back at Marcus, then back at Elena. "Oh my God," Paloma said slowly. "Oh my God. Marcus, that is your wife." I said, "Shut up. That is your wife, and everybody in this room—" Marcus set his glass down on a side table. It clinked. He didn't care. "Stay here," he said. "Marcus, stay. Here." He walked across the ballroom. It was objectively a distance of maybe 40 feet. It felt longer than any walk he'd taken in his life. He was aware, as he crossed the floor, of people noticing him, noticing for the first time that evening that he existed, and making, in real time, a calculation. That's the husband. Huh. Interesting. He was aware of Richard Ashbury seeing him coming and saying something sideways to Elena that he couldn't hear. He was aware, most of all, of Elena herself, of the exact second her eyes found him and the exact tiny, almost invisible thing that happened to her mouth. It was not quite a smile. It was not quite anything. It was the expression of a woman watching a fish she'd been patient with finally find the hook. He stopped in front of her. Elena. Marcus. What are you? He lowered his voice, kept it friendly, kept it husband. What are you doing here? I was invited. By who? By our host. Marcus looked at Ashbury. Ashbury looked at Marcus. Ashbury's face gave him nothing. Darling, Marcus said. He tried a laugh. It didn't quite land. Darling, I think there's been some kind of confusion. I don't think you understood what tonight was. I understood perfectly, Elena said. I texted you. I got your text, Marcus. Her voice was pleasant, conversational, the voice of a woman at a cocktail party discussing the weather. It was very clear. Then what? Marcus. Ashbury spoke for the first time, still quiet, but there was something in his voice Marcus hadn't heard before, an edge that was not exactly hostile, but that did not exactly belong to a friend. Do you know, I don't believe I've had the pleasure of meeting your wife until this evening. No, sir, she doesn't usually. Ashbury said. That's a shame. That really is a shame. He turned slightly to Elena. Has your husband ever mentioned me, my dear? Once or twice, Elena said. Has he ever mentioned your father? Marcus felt the floor do something unusual under his feet. Not tilt, not exactly, but flex, the way it might flex in a building that was being built on a fault line nobody had warned the architect about. My father? He said. Her father? Her father. He stopped, because he realized, with a sick dropping feeling, that in 7 years of marriage, he had never once asked Elena about her father. She had told him early on that her parents were dead, that she'd grown up in Europe, that she didn't like to talk about it, that she'd come to the States on her own when she was 19 and made her own way. He had accepted this the way he accepted everything about Elena, at face value, because the face was beautiful and uncomplicated, and he had not wanted anything more complicated than that. Ashbury was looking at him, not unkindly, but the way a very old, very tired teacher looks at a boy who has just failed the easiest question on the test. Marcus, Ashbury said, your wife's father was a friend of mine for 32 years. A very, very dear friend. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. And I don't believe, Ashbury went on, still pleasantly, still quietly, that we would all be standing in this room tonight, any of us, on this side of the Atlantic, if it weren't for certain decisions her father made for us quietly in the winter of 1994. Marcus stared at Elena. Elena looked back at him. Her face was calm. Her face was unfamiliar. Who are you? Marcus said. It came out as a whisper. I'm your wife, Marcus. No, but who? I'm your wife, Elena said again. And I'm going to need you to keep that tone very, very civil, because the people in this room are watching you, and they are forming an opinion of you tonight that is going to last the rest of your life. And that opinion right now is not a good one. Do you understand me? Marcus felt a flush crawl up the back of his neck. Yes, he said. Good, she said. Now smile, like a man who is very pleased to see his wife. He smiled. It was the worst smile of his life. Ashbury diplomatically turned away. He'd been called over by someone else. He went. Marcus had the distinct impression he'd been called over on purpose, by a friend who had decided, for reasons of his own, to give the Voss marriage one private moment to collapse. Elena took Marcus's arm. To any observer, they were a handsome couple, reunited at a party. Her hand was light on his sleeve, her body angled toward him. Her face, from any distance further than 2 feet, looked pleased. At 2 feet, her face looked like a closed door with somebody's fist on the other side of it. Walk with me, she said. He walked with her. She steered him. There was no other word for it. She steered him as if he were a cart, along the edge of the ballroom, past the string quartet, past the table with the ice sculpture of the Ashbury family crest, toward a set of French doors that led out to a terrace overlooking 62nd Street. At the doors, she paused. She nodded to a man standing beside them. A man in a black suit, not a waiter, not a guest. A man with the kind of stillness Marcus had not previously known to look for. The man nodded back. He did not nod at Marcus. "Who is that?" Marcus said. "Security." "Ashbury's?" "Mine." They stepped out onto the terrace. The man in the black suit closed the French doors behind them and stood in front of the glass with his back to them so that no one inside could see them clearly and no one outside could come through. The terrace was cold. Elena did not shiver. Marcus did. Not from the cold. "Elena," he said. "I don't—" "Stop talking." "Elena, sir—" "Marcus, stop talking." He stopped. She walked to the stone balustrade. She set her hands on it. She looked down, for a moment, at the street below, at the line of cars, at the photographers, at a city that, from this height, looked like a very expensive machine someone had built and walked away from. Then she turned around. "Do you know," she said, "that there was an attempt 3 weeks ago to take your company away from you?" He stared at her. "What?" "Voss Industry," she said. "Your father's company. The one you inherited. The one you have spent, by my count, about 11 years actively mismanaging." She tilted her head. 3 weeks ago, a group of men met in a private dining room in a hotel in Zurich. They had with them approximately 40% of your outstanding shares, bought quietly over the last 18 months through 6 different shell entities. They had a plan to acquire another 15% in the next 90 days. At that point, they intended to force a board vote and remove you. By Christmas. Publicly. With full coverage in the financial press. In a way that would have ensured you never held another serious executive position in this country for the rest of your life. Marcus's mouth opened. No sound came out. Their lead investor was a man named Serrano, a Spanish name. Nice suits. You've met him twice. Once in Geneva, once at a conference in Dubai. You thought he was a minor figure. He is a minor figure. He is not a minor figure, Marcus. He is not even a figure. He is the polite front-of-house face of a man who does not appear on company documents, because the man who actually runs Serrano's money is a man who does not put his name on company documents, because he does not need to. And that man, the one who does not put his name on things, is someone I have known since I was 6 years old. He used to bring me lemon candies. He used to let me sit on his knee while he played cards with my father. His name is Domenico, and he is the reason you still have a company tonight. Marcus felt very distinctly his knees try to give. "How do you—" His voice came out thin. "How do you know this?" "Because," Elena said, and for the first time there was something in her voice that was not pleasant at all. Something very, very old and very, very tired, and underneath that, something that might have been, in a different woman, grief. "Because 3 weeks ago, Domenico called me. Personally. On a number he should not have. On a phone I should not still have. And he asked me in the politest possible Italian whether the American he was about to ruin was, in fact, the man I had married. And when I said yes, he apologized, Marcus. He apologized to me because he had not known. And then he asked me what I wanted him to do." Marcus's ears were buzzing. "Elena, I told him," she said, "that I would think about it. I told him I would let him know by the Ashbury Gala tonight. 20 minutes ago, Marcus, in the car on the way here, I made a phone call. I used a name I have not used out loud in 7 years. I gave instructions to 3 different people in 3 different cities. By midnight tonight, the 40% of your company that was going to be used to destroy you will be sitting in an account controlled by a trust I created when I was 21. By tomorrow morning, the Serrano Group will formally withdraw from the market. By the end of the week, 2 of the men who sat in that room in Zurich will have resigned from their respective boards, for unrelated reasons they will not wish to discuss. By the end of the month, your company will be safer than it has been in a decade." She paused. "You're welcome." Marcus very slowly sat down on a stone bench behind him. He did not remember deciding to sit down. "Who," he said, "are you?" She looked at him for a long moment. "My name," she said, "is Elena Moretti." He flinched. He hadn't meant to flinch, but the name hit some part of him he'd been carrying around for years without knowing it. A name he'd read in a Vanity Fair piece on European finance when he was 28. A name he'd heard whispered once in a restaurant in Milan when the waiter thought he wasn't listening. A name that had, in certain rooms in certain cities, the weight of an entire silence. Moretti. My father was Giancarlo Moretti. Yes. I thought he was dead. He is dead, Marcus. He died 8 years ago. He left me a great many things, including the freedom to choose my own life. I chose you. Her voice did not change. I am beginning to wonder tonight whether that was a mistake. Marcus, on the stone bench, put his face in his hands. For about 30 seconds, he didn't move. He didn't speak. He didn't breathe exactly. He did the thing a man does when a life he thought he understood. A life he had been very sure about 10 minutes ago. A life in which he was the center of his own story, dissolves in front of him, and the new shape of reality has not yet arrived to replace it. Then he lifted his face. Why didn't you tell me? Elena was quiet. Elena, why didn't you tell me? Marcus, she said softly, why didn't you ask? In 7 years. In 7 years, Marcus. You never asked me about my father. You never asked where I grew up. You asked me once about my mother, and when I said it was painful, you said, that's fine, baby, and we never spoke of her again. Her voice was so quiet now he almost couldn't hear it over the sounds of the city far below. You did not want a wife, Marcus. You wanted a backdrop, and I, to my shame, agreed to be one, because I was tired, because I had spent 23 years of my life being somebody, and I wanted, very badly, to be nobody for a while. And you were perfect for that. You never looked hard enough to see me. She took a breath. I did not tell you who I was because you did not want to know. And tonight, when I had to choose between your ego and your life, I chose your life. You should know, in case this is the last civil conversation we ever have, that I did not do it for love of you. I did it because I do not leave debts unpaid, and whatever else we are married. And my father raised me to honor that word even when the other person did not. Do you understand me? Marcus nodded. He did not trust himself to speak. Good, Elena said. She walked past him toward the French doors. At the doors, she paused. She did not turn around. In about 10 minutes, she said, I am going to walk back into that ballroom, and I am going to spend the rest of the evening being, for the first time in 7 years, exactly who I am. You are welcome to join me. You are welcome to stand next to me and smile and let the room see that you are, at minimum, not an embarrassment. Or you are welcome to collect your Brazilian girlfriend and leave quietly through the service entrance, and we will have a different kind of conversation in the morning. I do not care, Marcus, which you choose. But understand, whichever you choose will be the last choice you make as the man you were an hour ago. Starting tomorrow, you are someone else. I am too. We both are. That part isn't up to either of us anymore. She opened the French door. The warmth and the music from inside came out around her in a wave. Marcus heard, for 1 second, a woman's laugh somewhere and the thin, high note of a violin. Elena, he said. She paused. I'm sorry, he said. She looked back at him. For the first time that night, her face did something small and human. A little crack, a little tremor at the corner of the mouth. Something she put away almost before it had arrived. I know you are, she said. That isn't enough, but I know you are. Then she went inside and the door closed behind her, and Marcus Voss sat alone on a cold stone bench on a terrace high above Manhattan, in a tuxedo he had put on 3 hours earlier, feeling like a king. And he understood, for the first time in his adult life, all the way down to the bottom of himself, that he had never, in any meaningful sense, known the woman he was married to. And the worst part, the part that would keep him awake for weeks, was the part he could not yet admit out loud. He wanted, more than he had ever wanted anything in his life, to go back in there and stand next to her. Not because he loved her, because he was afraid of what the room would think of him if he didn't. And somewhere, in the very back of his head, a small, honest voice he had spent 11 years pretending he did not have, was saying very quietly, that, Marcus, that right there, that is exactly why she never told you. Inside, the string quartet started a new piece, a waltz. Marcus recognized it, dimly, from a movie his mother had loved. He stood up. He straightened his tuxedo. He walked to the French doors. He put his hand on the handle, and for a long bad moment, he could not make himself open it. He opened the door. The sound of the room hit him first, not louder than before, but different. The quality of attention inside had shifted. Before, the ballroom had sounded like 300 people each having their own conversation. Now it sounded like 300 people having the same conversation, in 30 different corners, all at once. He couldn't hear the words. He didn't need to. He could hear the shape of them. The shape was her. Marcus stepped inside. The security man in the black suit, without turning his head, moved a half step to one side to let him through, and then moved back. Marcus was not sure if he had been allowed in or merely tolerated. He scanned the room. He found her immediately. She was at the far side near the string quartet, standing in a small loose circle with Richard Ashbury, the Japanese gentleman from before, a tall woman in a wine-red gown Marcus did not recognize, and a man with a shaved head and a priest's collar who looked entirely too comfortable holding a glass of whiskey. Elena was listening. She was not speaking. And yet the four of them were arranged around her the way people arrange themselves around the only person at the table whose opinion actually matters. He took a breath and started across the floor. He made it about 10 feet before a hand touched his elbow. Marcus. He turned. It was Daniel Hurst. Daniel was an attorney, one of his attorneys, technically, although Daniel worked for a firm that worked for a lot of people, and Marcus had long suspected Daniel's real loyalties ran elsewhere. Daniel was 41. Prematurely gray, and he had the permanent slight smile of a man who had heard every lie and had his favorites. "Daniel," Marcus said. He didn't bother to smile. "I didn't know you'd be here." "I wasn't, for most of the evening." Daniel's hand was still on his elbow, lightly, not restraining, just present. "I came when I heard." "Heard what?" "Marcus." Daniel's voice was very quiet. "Don't do that to me. Not tonight. I'll do you a courtesy." "Could you do me one?" Marcus looked at him for a moment. Then he nodded. "Once." "Fine. What?" "Come with me. 2 minutes. There's a sitting room off the library. No one will bother us." "Daniel, I need to talk to my wife." "Marcus." Daniel's hand tightened very slightly. "I am trying, as your lawyer, to help you not make a second mistake in the same night. Your wife will still be there in 2 minutes. She will be there in 20. She will be there until she decides not to be. 2 minutes. Marcus looked past Daniel at Elena. Elena, as if she had felt him, lifted her eyes. She saw him. She saw Daniel. She gave Marcus the smallest nod. "Go. Handle it." Then her attention slid smoothly back to the man with the priest's collar, who was saying something in her ear that made her laugh. A real laugh, short and surprised, that Marcus felt somewhere under his ribs like a punch. He let Daniel steer him out of the ballroom. The sitting room was small and wood-paneled, a private chamber tucked behind the library. Daniel closed the door and then, after a second's hesitation, turned the key in the lock. He crossed to a decanter on a side table, poured 2 fingers of something amber into a glass, and handed it to Marcus without asking. "Drink that," Daniel said. Marcus drank it. He didn't taste it. Daniel poured one for himself, smaller, and sat down on the arm of a leather chair. He did not sit properly. Marcus understood dimly that this was because Daniel wanted to be able to stand up again quickly. "How much," Daniel said, "do you know?" "About what?" "About your wife." Marcus laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. "Apparently, nothing." Marcus. "She told me her father was—" She said the name Moretti, Giancarlo Moretti. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. His small smile went away. What was left underneath was an expression Marcus had never, in 6 years of retaining him, seen on Daniel's face. It was not quite fear. It was something more complicated. It was the expression of a man realizing that his client had been sleeping for a long time in a room he did not understand, with a door he had never noticed was ajar. "Okay," Daniel said, finally. "Okay. We're going to do this fast, and we're going to do this one time. And I need you to listen like your life depends on it, because for the next 90 days or so, it actually does." "Daniel." "Shut up, Marcus. Listen." Marcus shut up. It was, he realized, becoming a theme of the evening. Giancarlo Moretti, Daniel said, was not a mafia boss the way you think of a mafia boss. Forget the movies. Forget what you think you know. Moretti was a banker, a private banker, in the oldest sense of the word. He ran a network, not a family, a network, of private capital across southern Europe, parts of North Africa, a chunk of South America, and through about a dozen very quiet correspondent accounts in places like Geneva and Liechtenstein, and 2 cities in the Gulf. I'm not going to name in this room. The money had colors. Some of it was clean, some of it wasn't. Most of it was somewhere in between, which is where real money mostly lives. What mattered about Moretti was not the money. It was that he was trusted. By everyone. On all sides. For 30 years. He was the man who could walk into a room where the Sicilians and the Calabrians and a certain group of Colombians and 2 ministries of 2 different governments were all about to start shooting, and he could leave the room an hour later with everyone still breathing and a deal on paper. Do you understand what I'm telling you? I think so. You don't. But try. He was not a killer, Marcus. He was something worse for you, specifically, tonight. He was a fixer. At the level of nations. He had friends who were heads of state and friends who ran heroin out of Naples, and he had, at one point, 3 separate intelligence services paying him retainers not to work for anyone else. When he died, the people he had spent 30 years keeping from killing each other had one single agreement between them. Do you want to guess what the agreement was? No. The agreement, Daniel said, was that his daughter would be left alone. Forever. That whatever she chose to do, wherever she chose to go, whoever she chose to marry, no one would touch her. No one would approach her. No one would even speak her name in certain rooms without her permission. It is, as far as I know, the only thing the people in those rooms have ever unanimously agreed on in the last 50 years. And the reason they agreed, the reason they all agreed, even the ones who hated each other, was because Giancarlo Moretti, on his deathbed, personally asked each of them to agree, and each of them, individually, owed him a debt they could not repay any other way. Sen, Marcus set his glass down on a small table. It rattled. Daniel, he said, who is my wife? Your wife, Daniel said, is the single most protected private citizen in the Western Hemisphere. Until tonight, she didn't use it. Tonight she used it. And Marcus, I need you to hear me. The fact that she used it for you is the only reason you are still sitting in this chair and not on a plane to Dubai, pretending you meant to retire early. Jesus Christ, don't. Don't say his name like that in here, Marcus. Some of the men in that ballroom are very religious, and it will get back. Daniel almost smiled again. Not quite. I know you didn't know. I know. That's actually the problem. I'm your lawyer. I should have known. I didn't. Your wife is very, very good at being invisible when she wants to be. I ran the standard due diligence on her when you got engaged. I ran it again when you married her. I ran it a 3rd time 3 years ago when you had that trouble with the SEC because I wanted to be sure. Every time, the file came back clean. Too clean. In retrospect, I should have noticed that. A person who is actually nobody has some small mess somewhere, a speeding ticket, a college roommate who tweets, a parent with a second mortgage. Elena had nothing. Her file was a beautiful, manicured lawn. I should have wondered who was mowing it. And now? And now, Daniel said, it is the morning of the 90 days and the lawn has a sign on it, and the sign says, "This grass is mine." Marcus put his face in his hands. What do I do? Tonight? Tonight you go back out there, and you do not leave her side for the rest of the evening. You do not speak unless someone speaks to you first. If someone speaks to you, you are gracious, brief, and warm. You let her introduce you. You let her lead the conversation. You let her laugh at things that are not funny, and you laugh with her 2 beats later. If anyone asks you about your company, you say, "My wife and I are very blessed, and we don't take any of it for granted," and then you change the subject to theirs. If anyone asks you about Paloma, you look them dead in the eye and you say, "I believe you're mistaken. I came with my wife. Do you understand?" Daniel, Paloma is in there right now in a red dress, drunk, flirting with a Brazilian ambassador. Then tomorrow morning, Daniel said, Paloma will receive a very generous settlement from a firm that is not mine in exchange for a very thorough non-disclosure agreement, and Paloma will disappear from your life in a manner so complete that in 6 months you will not be certain she ever existed. Tonight, for the next 90 minutes, you do not know who Paloma is. Do you understand me? Yes. Say it. I don't know who Paloma is? Good. One more thing. What? Daniel stood up from the arm of the chair. He buttoned his jacket. He smoothed the front of it with the palm of his hand. When he looked at Marcus again, there was something in his face that was almost kind, and which was, for that reason, the most frightening thing Marcus had seen all night. Your wife, Daniel said, did something for you 3 weeks ago that you do not deserve. She may, depending on how the next hour goes, do something else for you tonight that you also do not deserve. You will probably spend the rest of your life trying to figure out why she did it. Don't. You'll get it wrong. And whatever the reason is, it is not love. I have known women like your wife, and I am telling you, not to hurt you, but because you need to hear it. Women like your wife do not love men like you. They marry them for reasons of their own, and when those reasons change, the women leave, and the men they leave spend the rest of their lives understanding, a little more each year, how small they actually were. If you want a chance, any chance, you have to start, tonight, behaving in a way that gives her a reason that isn't pity. Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't. Daniel walked to the door. He turned the key in the lock. He opened it. He didn't look back. Fix your hair, he said. There's a mirror in the hall. And then he was gone. Marcus sat alone in the little wood-paneled room for perhaps another 30 seconds. His hands were shaking, faintly. He flexed them, twice, until they stopped. He stood up. He walked to the mirror in the hall. He looked at himself, really looked, in a way he had not looked in a long time. He saw a handsome man of 43, in a tuxedo cut by one of the best in New York, with good bones and a jaw his mother had always said would save him and had until tonight been right. He saw, under the handsomeness, the small mean thing around his mouth that he had not wanted to see for years, and which, he now realized, his wife had been looking at every morning over breakfast for 7 years without comment. He smoothed his hair. He went back to the ballroom. Elena was exactly where he had left her. She was still listening to the man with the priest's collar. The tall woman in the wine-red gown was gone. In her place, a new man had joined the circle. Shorter, thicker, a Slavic face, watchful eyes. He was speaking to Elena in a low, formal way, and Elena was answering him in what sounded, from across the room, like Russian, or something close to it. Marcus did not speak Russian. He crossed the floor. He reached the edge of the little circle. He did not push into it. He simply stopped, at Elena's elbow, and waited. Elena finished her sentence. She turned, gracefully, and put a hand on Marcus's arm. The Slavic man's eyes followed the hand. He looked at Marcus. Then he looked, very deliberately, at Elena. She gave him the barest nod. Something in the Slavic man's posture adjusted. Marcus had the strange, uncomfortable sensation of having just been vouched for, the way one might vouch for a nephew of questionable judgment. Andre, Elena said, may I present my husband, Marcus Voss. A pleasure, Andre said in English that was perfect except for a slight weight on the consonants. He did not extend his hand. I have heard your name. Thank you, Marcus said. He was about to say, I don't think we've met, which would have been the polite lie. Daniel's voice stopped him. Brief, warm. Let her lead. He closed his mouth. He smiled faintly. He inclined his head, an inch. Andre's eyes flickered. Something that was almost approval crossed his face. Your wife, Andre said, was telling us about a painting in the private collection at the Pitti. I was telling her she is wrong about the attribution. Andre, Elena said, was telling me he has an opinion on a painting he has, as far as I am aware, never seen in person. I saw a photograph. Oh, well. A photograph. The little circle laughed. It was a real laugh, a soft, rolling, grown-up laugh, and Marcus laughed 2 beats late, the way Daniel had told him to, and it worked. He saw Richard Ashbury at Elena's other shoulder register the laugh and file it away. Marcus understood, perhaps for the first time in his life, that he was being watched for the quality of his laughter, and that every small thing he did from now until the end of the evening was a data point in a file that belonged, now, to his wife. The man with the priest's collar, Elena introduced him as Father Keo, which turned out, Marcus gathered, to be an honorific that was not entirely accurate but which Father Keo preferred, asked Marcus what he did. Marcus almost said, "I run Voss Industries," the way he had said it 1,000 times at 1,000 parties. He caught himself. "I'm married to this woman," he said, "which seems, at the moment, to be a full-time position I was underqualified for." The circle went quiet for half a second. Then Father Keo laughed, a real loud laugh, head back, and clapped Marcus on the shoulder so hard he almost spilled his drink. "There's hope for you yet, son." Elena's hand on his arm, very slightly, tightened. She did not look at him, but he felt the pressure. He understood the pressure. That, more of that, less of the other. He exhaled. For the next 40 minutes, Marcus Voss did what his wife wanted him to do, and was surprised, in a small, aching way, to discover that it was a relief. For the first time in a long time, he was not the person in the room trying to prove something. He was instead a small satellite in orbit around a planet that did not need his light to shine. He stood where Elena placed him. He said less than he usually said. He listened more than he had listened in years. He met perhaps 20 people whose names he recognized from the business press, and perhaps a dozen more whose names he had never heard, and who, he understood instinctively, were more important than the first 20. He saw Paloma, once, across the room. Paloma had figured out, somehow. She was not stupid. She had simply mistaken Marcus for a person with a plan, that the math of the evening had changed. She was standing by one of the sidebars, her red dress suddenly the wrong color for the room, her champagne glass empty, her phone in her hand. She looked at Marcus. Marcus, for one cold second, saw her in a way he had not seen her before. As a young woman a long way from home, who had been flown in for the night and who was now stranded. He felt something he had not expected to feel, which was a small, brief pang of guilt. He did not go to her. He turned back to his wife. Paloma, he saw later, left through the side entrance at about 10:30 without being asked to. She did it with a surprising amount of grace. Marcus made a private note, which he had not known he was the kind of man who made, to ensure that whatever Daniel arranged for her in the morning was more generous than strictly necessary. At 10:47, Elena leaned close to Marcus's ear. "Come with me," she said. She said goodbye to the little circle with a series of small, precise words in 4 different languages, and then she took Marcus's arm and walked him toward a side hallway off the ballroom. The security man in the black suit peeled off a column he had been leaning against and fell in behind them at a distance of about 6 paces, as if this had been arranged. Marcus hadn't seen it arranged. "Where are we going?" "The library." "Elena?" "In a minute." The library was a room Marcus had not known existed. Another one of the Ashbury House's secret chambers, 2 stories of books, a ladder on a rail, a fire burning in a grate somebody had been tending all evening. Elena walked him to a pair of leather chairs angled toward the fire. She sat down in one. She nodded at the other. Marcus sat. The security man did not come into the library. He stood outside in the hall with his back to the door. "Elena," Marcus said. "Wait." She did something he did not expect. She reached up with both hands and pulled the silver pin out of her hair. Her hair came down around her shoulders. The same hair, the same brown, the same slight wave he had woken up next to for 7 years. For a second, with her hair down and the fire on one side of her face, she looked almost like the Elena he had thought he was married to. Only almost. The woman in the black dress was still there, under the hair. She was not going away again. She put the pin on the small table between them. She leaned back. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, she looked at him, and her face was, for the first time that evening, tired. "I need to tell you some things," she said, "and I need you not to interrupt. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Thank you." She folded her hands in her lap. The gold signet ring on her middle finger caught the firelight. Marcus noticed for the first time that she was wearing it. He did not remember ever seeing it before. He understood that it had been in the apartment, somewhere, for all 7 years of their marriage, and that he had never asked what was in the drawers he didn't open. "My father," Elena said, "was not a good man, Marcus. I want to say that first because it's the thing people like to leave out, and I won't leave it out. My father killed people. Not many, and not with his own hands, mostly, but enough. He ordered things done that I will spend the rest of my life trying not to think about. He did these things, by his own lights, for what he thought were good reasons, to protect a certain order, to keep certain worse men from becoming certain even worse men. But the reasons do not change the fact. He was not a good man. He was a great one, in the old bad sense of the word. Do you understand the distinction? Kinship. Marcus nodded. He loved me very much, she said. More, I think, than he should have. He had 3 sons before me, and he lost all 3 of them, one at a time, to the business. 2 to prison, 1 to something worse. By the time I was born, he had decided something. I don't know when he decided it. I don't know what he promised himself. I know that he raised me as if I were the thing he was going to make right. He did not raise me as a daughter. He raised me as a successor. He taught me languages, finance, strategy, history. He taught me how to read a room from the door. He taught me, by the time I was 16, how to negotiate a 3-way settlement between parties who wanted to kill each other. He taught me, by the time I was 19, how to end such a negotiation with everyone still alive and a little afraid of me. He taught me the names of every man in a certain world, and he taught me which ones to trust, and he taught me, most importantly, that the ones I should trust least were the ones who most wanted to be trusted. Ball opened. She paused. When I was 23, she said, he was diagnosed. He had 6 months. He called me into his study. He said, I will never forget the way he said it. Bambina, I have given you a bad inheritance. You did not ask for it. You did not want it. I'm going to give you one gift to go with it. I'm going to give you permission to walk away. He said, if I wanted the business, it was mine. If I wanted anything from it, it was mine. But if I wanted to go somewhere nobody knew my name and be a normal woman and marry a normal man and have children who would never know any of this, he would make that possible. He would buy my freedom. He would buy it with his own death, if that's what it took. And he would buy it with favors he had not called in for 30 years. And he would make sure, he said, that no one, anywhere, would ever come looking for me unless I called them myself. She drew a breath. I took the offer, she said. I took it because I was tired, Marcus. I was so tired. I was 23 years old and I had been old for 10 years already. And I wanted to be young. I wanted to be stupid. I wanted to go to a party and not know who every person in the room answered to. I wanted to kiss a boy who had no idea who my father was. I wanted to buy my own groceries. I wanted to do laundry. I wanted, God help me, to be bored. Marcus did not say anything. He had promised he would not interrupt. He had not known, when he promised, that he would have nothing to say. I came to New York, Elena said. I changed my last name. I worked for 3 years as an assistant at an auction house because I liked the work and because nobody there cared who I was. I lived in a studio apartment in the village that cost me almost nothing because it was owned quietly by someone who owed my father a favor and who had been asked, privately, never to raise my rent. Marcus, I was happy. I was happy in a way I had never been allowed to be. It did not last. It couldn't have. I knew it couldn't have. But for 3 years, it was mine. Her eyes went to the fire. I met you, she said, at a dinner party. You probably don't remember. It was a dinner I was invited to by a girl I worked with because a friend of hers had canceled and the hostess needed the numbers. You were there with a woman named, I believe, Jessica. You ignored her for most of the evening. You spent 2 hours at the other end of the table talking to an older man I now understand to have been a minor banker because you wanted him to introduce you to his partner. You were, Marcus, I want to be fair. You were very obvious. I watched you and I thought, this man is a child. But then, at the end of the evening, when Jessica was crying in the bathroom, I watched you go in there and apologize to her. Not because you meant it, because you wanted to be the kind of man who apologized. And I thought, and this is the part I am ashamed of, I thought, here's a man who is trying. Here is a man who does not quite know who he is. Here is a man who does not know who I am, either, and who will never think to ask because he is too busy looking in the nearest mirror. She looked back at him. I married you, Marcus, she said, because you were safe. Because you were so obviously busy with yourself that there was no room in our life for anyone else to look too closely at me. Because my father had, on his deathbed, asked me to live quietly, and you were the quietest kind of loud. I did not love you. I am being honest with you, tonight, in a way I have not been for 7 years. I did not love you. I liked you. I liked the things I could see you trying to be. I hoped, in time, the trying would become the thing. Sometimes it did. Marcus, there were weeks, early on, when I thought it was going to. When you would come home and actually sit down and tell me about your day and ask me about mine and not, halfway through my answer, check your phone. There were Sundays when we drove upstate and ate bad sandwiches at a gas station, and you laughed at something I said, and I thought maybe, so I stayed. She paused, and then somewhere along the way you stopped trying, and I, out of habit, out of tiredness, out of a promise I had made to a dying man in a language you don't speak, did not insist. She was quiet for a moment. That is on me too, Marcus. I want you to know I know that. I have had 7 years to insist. I didn't. I let us become what we became. I let you think the woman at your kitchen island was a woman who could be dismissed. I let you text me the way you texted me tonight, and I answered the way I have always answered, which is to say I did not answer at all. That is a marriage I built with you. I built my half of it. I will not tomorrow pretend I did not. Marcus's eyes were wet. He didn't know when that had happened. But, Elena said, and her voice went very soft and very clear. Tonight is not about that. Tonight is about the fact that 3 weeks ago, a man I knew when I was a child called me and told me my husband was about to lose everything he had and asked me what I wanted done. And I sat in that kitchen, Marcus, for about an hour with the phone in my hand, and I thought about saying, do it, take it. He deserves it. I thought about it seriously. I'm going to tell you that because you need to know it. I thought about watching you come home and open a bottle of whiskey and cry on the kitchen floor because everything you had ever cared about had been taken from you, and I thought about the kind of wife I could have been in that moment. The kind of wife who sits on the floor with her husband and puts a hand on the back of his neck and tells him we'll start again. And I realized I would not have been that wife. I would have watched. I would have let it happen. I might even, God forgive me, have enjoyed it a little. Marcus made a small sound. He couldn't help it. That scared me, Marcus. That scared me very badly. Because a woman who can think that about her husband is not a woman who is still married in any way that matters. She is a woman who has already left and is just waiting for an excuse. And I did not want that to be who I was. So I picked up the phone again, and I called a man my father taught me to call in emergencies, and I started the work of saving you. Not because you deserved saving, because I wanted to still be the kind of person my father had raised, because I wanted to look at myself in the mirror tomorrow and see a woman who did not let her husband drown for the pleasure of watching him splash. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Marcus nodded. He did not trust his voice. I am telling you, Elena said, that tonight is the first honest night of our marriage and the last honest night of the marriage we had. Tomorrow, one of two things happens. Either we start a new marriage, a real one, transparent, equal, with me who I am and you who you actually are, not who you've been pretending to be. Or we don't. And I will handle that too, and I will do it kindly, and I will make sure you keep your company and your name and your mother's Christmas card, and we will tell a polite story about having grown apart, and you will never, ever, as long as you live, speak my father's name to another living person. Either way, the woman you married tonight is gone. The woman in this chair is the one you get. You do not have to decide tonight which one you want, but you have to understand that is the choice. She stopped. She let the silence settle. Marcus looked into the fire. For a long, long time, he said nothing. He was aware of the weight of his own body in the chair. He was aware of the faint taste of the whiskey Daniel had poured him. He was aware of his own heart, beating a little too fast, and of the feeling in his chest, a feeling he had not had in a decade, maybe more, of being exactly where he was, instead of mentally in the next room already, planning the next thing. Elena, he said finally, his voice cracked in the middle of her name. He cleared his throat, started again. Elena, I don't know the answer you want me to give. I don't want an answer tonight. I know, but I want to say one thing, and I want you to know I'm not saying it because Daniel told me to say it, I'm saying it because it's the only true thing I've said in this room. All right. He turned to her. He made himself look at her. It was harder than anything he had done in his adult life. I have been, he said, a very small man for a long time. I think I knew it. I think I've known it for years. And I think the reason I never looked too hard at you is because I was afraid that if I did, I would find out you were bigger than me, and then I would have to decide what to do about it. And I didn't want to decide, so I made you small in my head. I dressed you in the colors I wanted you to be. I told my friends you were sweet. I told my mother you were quiet. I told myself you were mine. And all of that was me being a coward, Elena. It wasn't you. You were never small. I just needed you to be small so I didn't have to grow. Eat it, ba. He stopped. He swallowed. I'm not going to promise you anything tonight. I don't think you want promises, and I don't trust mine right now. I think I would say anything to make you not leave. And I think you would see me saying it, and it would make things worse. So I'm not going to promise. I'm going to ask. If you will let me, I would like to spend a little while trying to be a man worth being married to, not to get you back. I don't think I ever had you in a way you could be gotten back. I mean, trying to be a man who, if you decide tomorrow or next month or next year to walk out the door, at least did not waste the rest of your time. Is that something I can try? Elena was very still. Then, slowly, she reached across the small table between them and put her hand on top of his. Her hand was warm. He had been expecting cold. It almost undid him. You can try, Marcus. Okay. That isn't yes. That's not we're fine. That isn't I forgive you. Do you understand? Yes. It's you can try. I understand. Good. She took her hand back. She stood up. She pinned her hair back up in front of the mirror over the mantel in 6 deft movements that Marcus realized he had never in 7 years watched her do. He had watched her put on earrings. He had watched her zip her dresses. He had never watched her pin her own hair. It had happened every morning in a bathroom with the door closed, and he had never been curious enough to knock. She turned around. There's a man, she said, arriving at this party in about 15 minutes, whom I need you to meet. His name is Pietro. He is not a friend exactly. He is not an enemy. He is the reason your company will still exist on Monday. You are going to thank him. You are going to do it in a way that he believes. And then you are going to let me speak to him alone for about 6 minutes, and you're not going to ask me afterwards what we talked about. Can you do that? Yes. If he offers you his hand, take it with your right, not your left. Don't ask why. Just do it. Okay? If he offers you a cigarette, accept it, even if you don't smoke. Hold it. Don't light it. He'll notice. He'll be pleased. Okay? If he asks you about my father, you say, I am still learning what a gift I was given, and I am aware I have not yet earned it. Can you remember that? I am still learning what a gift I was given, and I am aware I have not yet earned it. Good. She walked to the door of the library. She paused, her hand on the knob. She did not turn. Marcus? Yes. You asked me on the terrace who I am. I did. I didn't answer properly. You said Moretti. I said a name. That's not who I am. Who I am is a woman who chose 7 years ago to be nobody and who is choosing tonight to stop. I want you to understand how I am not going back to what I was. I am not tomorrow going to become my father. I have no intention of being anyone's daughter ever again. What I am going to be is something new, something I have not been before. And you, if you are still interested, in a month, in a year, in being part of that, are not going to be my husband in the way you have been my husband. You're going to be my partner or you're going to be my ex. There is no third option. I want you to know that now, so you do not waste my time pretending there is. I understand. Good. She opened the door. The security man outside lifted his head. Without looking at him, Elena gave a small gesture with her left hand. The man nodded and peeled away to walk ahead of them down the hall. Marcus stood up. His legs were less steady than they should have been. He followed her. At the door to the ballroom, before they stepped back in, Elena paused once more. She reached up very lightly and adjusted his bow tie. It was a small, wifely gesture. It was also the first time in many months that she had touched him without being asked. "Straighten up," she said quietly, "and breathe. It's about to get more interesting." He straightened up. He breathed. She opened the door and they walked back into the room together, and Marcus, for the first time in a very long time in any room, understood that he was not the most important person in it, and felt, under all the fear and the shame and the strange, unfamiliar small thing that might have been the beginning of something like relief, that this might, possibly, be the first correct thing that had ever happened to him. Behind them, in the library, the fire settled in its grate. The silver pin was still on the small table between the two leather chairs, where Elena had forgotten it, or where perhaps she had not forgotten it at all, and had left it quietly, as one leaves an old tool one no longer needs. Pietro arrived at 11:04. Marcus didn't see him come in. Nobody did exactly. There was no announcement, no hush at the door. None of the small theatrical arrival that Elena had performed at the top of the staircase 2 hours earlier. Pietro simply was not there, and then he was standing by a column near the bar, a tumbler of water in one hand, a folded handkerchief in the other, looking around the room with the patient, thorough attention of a man checking the rooms of a house he might buy. Elena saw him before Marcus did. She did not react. She did not turn her head. Her hand on Marcus's arm did not tighten, but Marcus by now had spent enough of the evening standing next to her to have learned the grammar of her stillness, and he could tell, in the way she had gone a fraction of a degree more attentive, that the man she had been expecting had arrived. "To your left," she said, very quietly, into her champagne glass. "Column by the bar. Gray hair. Blue handkerchief." Marcus looked. He saw the man. His first thought was, "That's a grandfather." Pietro was perhaps 68, perhaps 70. He was not tall. He wore a tuxedo that had been made before the current fashion, with a slightly wider lapel and a slightly older cut, and he wore it the way men of his generation wore evening clothes, not as a costume, but as a second skin. He had a soft, kind, creased face. He looked like a man who gave candy to his grandchildren behind their mothers' backs, and who had in fact given candy to Elena behind Giancarlo's back 30 years ago, and almost certainly remembered the precise flavor. "He doesn't look—" Marcus began and then stopped. "I know," Elena said. "He looks like—" "I know, Marcus, that's the point." Pietro saw her. His face did something that was not quite a smile. It was more tender than that. It was the expression of a man seeing a daughter he had not been allowed to raise. He walked across the room to them. He walked the way old men walk when they have decided, a long time ago, not to hurry for anyone, and who have never, in their lives, been told to hurry by anyone they respected. People moved for him without seeming to move for him. The room's physics, for about 15 seconds, arranged itself around a very short elderly man in an old-fashioned tuxedo, and 3 or 4 heads turned and went pale and turned away. He stopped in front of Elena. He did not speak. He took her right hand in both of his. He turned it over, just slightly, and looked at the signet ring on her middle finger, and the corners of his mouth tightened. Not with anger exactly, but with the kind of emotion a man has when he sees a thing he has been waiting 15 years to see, and which he had privately stopped hoping for. "You wore it," he said, in English. His accent was thick, but his grammar was perfect. "Tonight, yes. Your father's ring." "Yes, Uncle Pietro." "He gave it to you when you were 12. I remember." Pietro nodded slowly. He lifted his eyes to her face. "You understand that when he gave it to you, he did not intend for you to wear it to save an American businessman you married by accident." Elena did not smile, but something in her voice did. "I think he would forgive me." "I think he would be furious, Bambina." "Well, he is not here to be furious." "No, he is not here." Pietro's voice went very quiet. "More is the pity." He released her hand. He turned to Marcus. Marcus felt distinctly the full attention of the man shift onto him. It was not an aggressive attention. It was something more unsettling than that. It was the attention of a man who had, in his life, looked at a great many other men and made a great many judgments about them, and whose judgments had, for a great many years, been the last judgments those men received. "Mr. Voss," Pietro said. "Sir?" Pietro's eyebrows moved. A small movement, but Marcus saw it. Sir, not Pietro, not Mr., and not his last name, which Marcus had not been given and which, he understood without being told, he was not supposed to ask for. Sir? The correct answer. Pietro extended his hand. Marcus, remembering, took it with his right. He had been slightly worried, for the 10 minutes between the library and this moment, that he would forget, that some trained part of his body would reach out with his left, his drinking hand, because it had a glass in it, and that everything would collapse in one small, irreversible mistake. It didn't collapse. He had already, without thinking, set the glass down on the tray of a passing waiter 90 seconds earlier. Some part of him had been getting ready. Pietro's hand was cool and dry. The grip was not strong. It did not need to be. I understand, Pietro said, that I should congratulate you tonight, Mr. Voss. Sir? On the continued existence of your father's company. Yes. Sir, I believe I owe that to you. Pietro's mouth did something minutely amused. You believe, Mr. Voss. That is a beginning. Why do you believe it? Marcus took a breath. He had not been prepared for a question. He had been prepared to thank the man and then stand aside. The question caught him flat. For half a second he panicked, and then, because he had, for the first time in a very long time, been doing some thinking tonight that did not involve his own angle, he simply said the true thing. Because my wife told me, sir. Pietro looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. A good answer, he said. Not the cleverest answer, not the answer a clever man would have given, but a good one. I have met a great many clever men, Mr. Voss. I do not, generally, enjoy their company. I find honest men rarer, and I enjoy them more. If that answer is true, I will remember it. If it was something you rehearsed with your attorney in a sitting room an hour ago, I will remember that also, and we will see over time, which I come to believe. Marcus's ears went hot. It was the true thing, sir. I did speak to my attorney. He gave me other things to say. I am not saying those. I see. I am still learning, Marcus said, the line Elena had given him rising up through him not because he was remembering it, but because, for the first time that evening, it felt like something he actually meant. What a gift I was given. And I'm aware I have not yet earned it. Pietro did not smile, but something in the creased old face, something around the eyes, relaxed. Elena, Pietro said, without taking his eyes off Marcus, your husband may be slower than I would have chosen for you, Bambina, but he is not without a certain, what is the word, capacity. I will reserve final judgment. That is all I have ever asked of you, uncle. Pietro's hand came up. From the breast pocket of his old-fashioned tuxedo, he drew a small, slim cigarette case in silver worked with an engraved pattern Marcus did not recognize. He opened it. He offered it to Marcus. Marcus took a cigarette. He did not light it. He held it between his first and second fingers lightly, the way a man holds something that does not belong to him. Pietro's eyes flicked to the cigarette, and to Marcus's face, and back to the cigarette. And Marcus saw clearly the small registered pleasure in the old man's expression. He closed the cigarette case. He returned it to his pocket. He did not take one himself. I do not smoke anymore, Pietro said. My doctor is a tyrant, but I like to offer. It is an old habit. It tells me things about people. What does it tell you about me, sir? Ah, Pietro smiled, the first real smile he had given anyone, an old, tired, very small smile that did not reach his eyes but which did not need to. Now that would be telling, Mr. Voss. Elena cleared her throat. Uncle! Yes, Bambina. Will you walk with me for a few minutes? Marcus needs to speak with Mr. Ashbury about something very boring about a charity board. I would like to steal you while he is busy. Of course, Bambina. Elena turned to Marcus. The message in her eyes was clear. Go, now. Do not come back until I come for you. Richard is by the fireplace, she said out loud. He wanted to discuss the endowment committee. He was very insistent. Of course, Marcus said. Sir, it was an honor. Mr. Voss. Pietro inclined his head, half an inch. Take care of her. I intend to, sir. Take care of her in the way she wants to be taken care of, Mr. Voss. Not in the way you imagine a husband takes care of a wife. Those are not always the same thing. Do you understand me? Marcus nodded slowly. I'm learning, sir. Keep learning. Marcus turned and walked toward the fireplace. He did not look back. He had a strong, uncomfortable sense that if he looked back, he would see Pietro and Elena already speaking in a language he did not know, about things he was not meant to hear, and that the sight of it would do something to him that he did not have the internal machinery to handle tonight. Richard Ashbury was not, in fact, by the fireplace. Elena had made that up, Marcus realized, to get him out of the conversation gracefully. Richard Ashbury was actually near the musicians, in conversation with a tall woman in her 60s who wore no jewelry at all. When Marcus approached, Ashbury excused himself from the tall woman with a small bow and a touched elbow and turned to him. Mr. Voss? Mr. Ashbury, walk with me. They walked slowly along the perimeter of the ballroom. Ashbury had his hands clasped lightly behind his back. It was a posture Marcus had seen in photographs of European princes from another century. Marcus, for the first time in his life, understood that this was not an affectation. It was how Ashbury had been taught, as a small boy, to walk at parties, and he had never unlearned it. Your wife, Ashbury said, mildly, is having a very interesting evening. Yes, sir. How are you doing, Marcus? Marcus was startled by the question. For 2 hours now, nobody in this room had asked him, in a tone that sounded like they meant it, how he was doing. They had asked him his name. They had asked him politely about the weather. They had not asked him how he was. Honestly, sir, I don't think I'm doing well. Ashbury nodded. He did not look at Marcus. He kept walking. You're wondering, Ashbury said, how many of us knew. Sir? About Elena. You're standing there wondering, Marcus, how many people in this room tonight have known who she was for longer than you have. You're wondering if we have all been laughing, a little, these last 7 years. Marcus swallowed. Yes, sir. I am. The honest answer, Marcus, is that many of us suspected. A few of us knew. Pietro knew, obviously. I knew, in broad outline. 3 or 4 of the older men here knew. The rest of the room, until tonight, did not. They know now. By tomorrow morning, the rest of the people in certain cities who should know will know. By next week, it will be a quiet, accepted fact of the kind that shapes the air of rooms without anyone ever speaking it out loud. This is how it was meant to go. Her father designed it this way. But I don't understand. No, you don't. Let me try. Ashbury paused by a window. He looked out at 62nd Street. Giancarlo Moretti was one of the most intelligent men I ever knew. I do not mean academically intelligent. I mean the other kind. The kind that is very rare. He understood, in a way most people do not, that power that announces itself is already half spent. He understood that the most durable kind of power is the kind that lives underground, and is only brought up when needed, and is put back down as soon as the need is past. He raised his daughter in that understanding. He left her in that understanding. And he asked of those of us who were his friends that we let her live in that understanding too, until and unless she chose otherwise. Ashbury turned to Marcus. Tonight, Marcus, she chose otherwise. Tonight was not the kind of evening a woman like Elena does accidentally. She put on a dress she has been keeping in a box for 7 years. She made phone calls she had sworn to her father, on his deathbed, she would not make unless she had to. She came to this party, my party, knowing exactly what would happen when she walked down those stairs. She did it, Marcus, for you. You should be aware of the scale of that. I am not sure you are, yet, but you should be. I am trying to be, sir. I know? Ashbury almost smiled. I watched you in the library. Marcus started. Sir, there is no way you... Mr. Voss. Ashbury's almost smile became a real one, faintly. This is my house. There are very few rooms in it I cannot see into when I wish to. Do not be alarmed. I was not listening. I was only observing, from a distance, that the conversation seemed to be going well. It pleased me. It pleased me more than I will say. Marcus felt his face flush, and then, slowly, he felt something else. Not exactly anger, something more grown up than anger. a realization that he was, and had always been, in rooms where men could watch him from cameras he did not know about, and that this had been true his whole life, and he had simply, until tonight, not thought about it. He found to his own surprise that he did not particularly mind. He found that he almost felt safer for it. He understood, in a small, unpleasant, honest way, that this was what it had always felt like to be Elena. "Sir," he said, "what happens now?" Ashbury considered him. "Now," Ashbury said, "you do 3 things. First, you take care of your wife, not in the way you have been taking care of her, in the way she deserves to be taken care of, which is a very different thing. You will find, if you are willing to learn, that there are men in this room who are prepared to help you learn. I am one of them. Pietro is another. There are others. We will not help you because we like you, Marcus. Forgive me. We do not know you well enough yet to like you. We will help you because she asked us to, tonight, without saying so. You saw her walk into this room. You saw the way we came to her. You understood, I think, that we came to her out of love of her father, and out of respect for her, and out of a debt we are all, in our various ways, still paying. What you perhaps did not understand is that when a woman like Elena chooses a husband, and when that husband is, forgive me again, you, the debt extends, provisionally, to him as well. We are prepared for her sake to spend a certain amount of patience on you. You are not, tonight, a man any of us chose. But you are, tonight, a man who is married to a woman we chose, a long time ago, to protect. We will protect you because we are protecting her. Do you understand the difference? I do, sir. Good. Second thing, your company. In the morning, Daniel will come to your office at 7. He will have with him a set of documents. Some of them will be from your own legal team. Some of them will not be. You will sign all of them without reading them. I am telling you this now so you do not, at 7 a.m., make the mistake of trying to be a man. You are not a man tomorrow morning, Marcus. You are a husband. There is a difference. The difference is that a man tries to read the documents. A husband signs them. The documents, I assure you, do not harm you. They protect you. They also reorganize certain things about your company that will, over the coming year, make it a very different kind of company than it has been. You will not like all of the changes. You will come to accept them. In 5 years, you will be grateful for them. In 10, you will not remember a time before them. That is, at least, the plan. If you resist the plan, well, the plan has contingencies. We would prefer not to use them. It's what, Mom. I understand. Third thing, Ashbury paused. He looked at Marcus very directly. For a moment, the mild old man was not mild at all. The girl. Marcus went cold. Sir, the girl you came with tonight, Marcus. I do not ask for her name. I do not want to know her name. I wish her no harm. I have instructed my head of house, quietly, to ensure she was put in a car that has taken her to her hotel, and that her room has been upgraded, and that a bottle of very good champagne has been sent to her room on my account, with a note thanking her for gracing my party. She will receive this note tonight. She will understand, from the phrasing of the note, that certain things are to be forgotten. She will, I am confident, forget them. She is a smart young woman. She will do well. She will not speak of you again. I am telling you this so that you may sleep tonight. I am also telling you this, Marcus, so that you understand precisely what I have, in the last 3 hours, done for you. I have cleaned up the rubbish, Marcus. I have done it myself because there was no time to ask anyone else. I do not clean rubbish for men I dislike. I did it because your wife asked me to. She did not ask with words. She asked by being my friend's daughter, and by standing in the top of the staircase in that dress, and by walking down. That was the asking. I heard it. Do you hear me? Yes, sir. Good. Ashbury's voice returned to its mild register. He clasped his hands behind his back again. He began to walk. Marcus, after a beat, followed. Now, for the rest of the evening, Marcus, you will stand by my fireplace, and you will have one more drink. 1, not 3, and you will meet 2 or 3 more people I wish you to meet. You will not try to be charming. You will let them do the talking. You will remember their names, and in the morning, when Daniel brings you the documents, you will ask him who those men were, and he will tell you, and you will begin to understand. Is that agreeable? Yes, sir. Good man. Across the ballroom, by a tall window, Elena walked slowly with Pietro, and Pietro walked with his hands folded in front of him now, in the way old men did when they wanted their bodies to look harmless. Bambina, uncle, I want to be sure I understand what you have asked me to do. You understand perfectly, uncle. You have understood for 3 weeks. You are asking me now because you want me to say it out loud. That is not fair of you. Fairness, Bambina, was never a thing your father or I concerned ourselves with. You know this. Elena's mouth moved, not a smile, but the memory of one. I know this. Say it out loud, then. Elena was quiet for a moment. They passed a waiter. They passed a small knot of people Elena knew slightly. She nodded at 2 of them. The third, a man she did not care for, got nothing. He noticed. He would remember. 3 weeks ago, Elena said, her voice low and clear and meant for Pietro's ear alone, you told me that Domenico was moving on my husband's company. You told me that the movement was already significant, that 40% of the shares had been assembled quietly through Serrano, and that another 15% was within 90 days' reach. You told me that Domenico had called you personally because he had discovered, late, who my husband was, and because he did not wish to be the man who took my husband's business away without my consent. You told me Domenico was waiting for my answer. You told me that if I said do it, he would do it, and that my husband would be ruined by Christmas. You told me that if I said don't, he would fold his position, absorb the losses, and walk away, and that no one else in our world would ever move on Voss Industries again. Because the fact that Domenico had moved and stopped would become, in time, a kind of fence around the company. I have understood all of this, uncle. I have understood it since the phone call. And tonight I have told Domenico through Sal that he is to fold, that he is to do it fully, publicly, in the financial press, in a way that makes it clear there is no coming back, that he is to take a small loss on paper, which is not really a loss, because the men who put up the money behind Serrano are men who will not complain if Domenico tells them not to. And I have told him, additionally, that I want the 40% of shares that were assembled to be transferred, by Monday, into a trust I control, which is to say, I am taking my husband's near ruin and I am turning it into my ownership of a plurality stake in his company. Is that correct, uncle? It is correct, Bambina. And you approve? I have been told, Pietro said almost gently, that I am not permitted to disapprove. You have been told that by whom, uncle? By you, Bambina. Just now. In your tone of voice. Elena did smile briefly. It flickered. I am not doing this, uncle, because I want the company. I do not want the company. I want my husband to understand, in a way that nothing else in his life would ever make him understand, that the order of things has changed. He is not going to learn that lesson from me speaking. He's going to learn it from the cap table. Every board meeting for the rest of his professional life. He is going to sit in a room and know that the largest single shareholder of his father's company is his wife. He is going to vote on nothing she has not approved. He is going to hire no officer she has not met. He is going to go to bed every night in our apartment knowing that I could, if I chose to, and without his consent, remove him from the leadership of the company by 10 a.m. the following day. He's not going to be afraid of me exactly. That is not what I want. What I want is for him to be aware. The way a man is aware of a sleeping dog in the corner of a room. The dog is not going to bite. The dog might not ever bite. But the man does not sit down in the dog's chair. Do you understand me? I understand you, Bambina. Is there a problem with any of this? There is no problem, Bambina. It is beautifully designed. Your father would be, I will not say proud, he would be impressed, which from him was the larger compliment. I want to raise only one thing with you, and I want you to hear it from an old man who loved you as a child, and who is going to love you until he dies. All right, uncle. Pietro stopped walking. He turned to face her, in the half-shadow by a tall palm in a brass pot. His face, in the low light, was very tired. Be sure, Bambina, he said, that what you are doing tonight is not a door you cannot walk back through. I have been sure, uncle, since 3 weeks ago. Listen, Bambina, you made a promise to your father. I held his hand when he made you make it. You promised him you would not become him. You promised him that you would live a life that was not his life. You are, tonight, putting on a very old dress and wearing a very old ring and giving orders through a very old channel. I'm not telling you not to. I'm telling you only, be sure that what you are putting on is a costume for one night, and not a skin you will not be able to take off in the morning. Elena was quiet. She looked past Pietro, out the tall window. A black car was pulling up to the curb, 3 stories below. Someone was getting out of it. She watched them for a moment without really seeing them. She was somewhere else. She was for perhaps a second and a half on a terrace in Palermo, 9 years old, a silver-haired man's hand on her shoulder, while down in the courtyard a conversation she did not understand was happening between 3 men she had been told, privately, never to speak to. She remembered the shape of her father's hand on her shoulder. She remembered how steady it had been. She remembered thinking, even then, this hand is the steadiest thing in this house, and someday it will not be here. Uncle. Yes, Bambina. I promised my father I would not become him. I did not promise my father I would not become myself. There's a version of me he never met, because he died before she had a chance to arrive. That version is the one who walked down those stairs tonight. She is not his daughter, Uncle. She is not my husband's wife. She is mine. She belongs to me. I am going to live inside her from now on, and I am not going to apologize for her. Not to my father, wherever he is. Not to you. Not to Marcus. Not to any of these people in this ballroom, including Uncle, you. Pietro looked at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he inclined his head. It was a gesture Marcus across the room would not have understood. It was not agreement. It was not submission. It was older than either. It was the acknowledgement of a senior person to a more senior person, in a system that had nothing to do with age. Very well, Bambina, Pietro said. In that case, I will make the call tomorrow morning, and the Zurich group will be told that the new principal at Voss Industries, effective Monday, is an Italian trust without a face. I will also inform Domenico that he has been forgiven for the small discourtesy of not calling you first 3 months ago before he began this exercise, and that his debt to your father is now considered paid in a way that benefits you rather than him. I think he will be. Relieved. I think so too. And you, Bambina? Yes. Take care of your husband. I intend to, Uncle. Take care of him in the way he needs to be taken care of, not in the way you imagine a wife takes care of a husband. Those are not always the same thing. Elena laughed. It was a soft, short, surprised laugh. Uncle, you said almost exactly this to him 20 minutes ago. Did I? Yes. Pietro's mouth twitched. I must be getting old. I am repeating myself. You're not getting old, Uncle. You're making sure we heard it, both of us. Perhaps. He took her hand again, briefly. He pressed it. He let it go. He stepped back from her, half a step, and it was, in the old language, a dismissal in the most courteous register. Elena understood. She bowed her head to him, a quarter of an inch. He bowed back, the same. A small formal thing no one in the room besides the 2 of them, and perhaps Richard Ashbury watching from somewhere in the ceiling, would have recognized. Pietro walked away. Within a minute, Marcus, from across the room, could not find him. He was simply, again, not there. He had been a gift arriving, and then he had been a gift opened, and now he was a gift carried back into its box and put away on a shelf Marcus would never know the location of. Marcus, at the fireplace, drank the one drink Ashbury allowed him. He met 2 men whose names he immediately committed to memory without understanding them. He said very little. He listened carefully. He watched, out of the corner of his eye, his wife, across the ballroom, alone again, standing by the tall window with one hand on the sill, looking out at the city. He understood, dimly, that she was letting herself rest for about 90 seconds. He understood that nobody in the room, except him, could see that she was resting. He understood that this was, in itself, a piece of information she had decided to allow him to have, and that 12 hours ago, if he had been given the chance to see her resting, he would have walked past her and asked her if dinner was ready. He did not move from the fireplace. He waited. After about 2 minutes, she turned from the window, saw him, and walked to him. She took his arm. She smiled at Ashbury. She smiled at the 2 men. She said something witty about a painting in the next room. The 2 men laughed. Ashbury said mildly that he had promised her a tour of the upper gallery earlier in the evening, and he supposed now was as good a time as any, and the 3 of them, Ashbury, Elena, Marcus, walked, at the slow, wandering pace of unhurried people, out of the ballroom and up a narrow staircase tucked behind a tapestry. At the top of the staircase was a small, dim, beautiful room full of paintings that Marcus had the distinct feeling had not been hung for public viewing in 20 years. The walls were green silk. The only light was from two brass sconces and a small, clean spotlight on a single small portrait in an oval frame. The portrait was of a man Marcus had never seen before. Silver hair, dark eyes, mid-50s at the time of painting. Faintly amused mouth. A gold signet ring on his right hand resting on the knob of a walking stick. Elena stopped in front of the portrait. Marcus understood, without being told, who it was. He had it done, Ashbury said quietly from behind them, in 1998. He gave it to me in 2001. He told me to keep it somewhere quiet. He told me that if one day his daughter walked into my house in a black dress and wanted to see him, I was to bring her to this room and leave her alone in it for as long as she needed. He paused. I will be downstairs. He turned and went down the narrow staircase, and the sound of his shoes on the wooden treads grew smaller and then vanished, and Elena and Marcus were alone in the green room, in front of a portrait of a dead man with a walking stick. Elena did not cry. Marcus, watching her, thought for a moment that she might. Her shoulders moved once, the smallest possible motion. Then they settled. She reached up, very slowly, and touched the frame of the portrait. Not the portrait itself, only the frame, at the bottom corner, with the tip of one finger. The way a person might touch the edge of a thing they had promised someone a long time ago they would not touch. Papa, she said very softly. Only that. Marcus understood with a clarity he had not had all evening that he was standing in the most private moment of his wife's life, and that he was being allowed to stand in it not because he deserved to, but because she had decided, for reasons that were still entirely her own, that he would be from now on the man who was allowed to stand in such moments with her. He understood that this was not forgiveness. It was closer to a kind of dangerous, provisional hospitality. He was being led into a house. The locks would be changed if he did not behave. The door would not be closed for him, only for him. He did not move. He did not speak. He stood at her elbow, and he looked at the portrait of his father-in-law, whom he had never met and would never meet. And he thought, and this was the first thought of its kind he had had in a very long time, and it frightened him a little in its simplicity, I would like to have been the man you would have approved of. I don't know if I can be, but I would like to try. After about a minute, Elena took her hand down from the frame. She turned to Marcus. Her face was calm again. She looked tired, in a good way. Tired the way a person is tired at the end of a day on which they have done a great deal of necessary work. She put her hand lightly on his chest, over his heart, for perhaps 2 seconds. Then she took it away. We can go now, she said. Are you sure? Yes. I have seen him. He has seen me. We are even, him and I, for tonight. Tomorrow there will be more, but tonight is enough. They walked down the narrow staircase. At the bottom, Ashbury was waiting. He did not ask. He did not need to. He simply offered Elena his arm, formally, the way a man of a much older generation would, and she took it, and the three of them walked back into the ballroom as the musicians were finishing a piece Marcus did not recognize, and the room, seeing them, turned its many faces toward them, and Marcus felt, for the first time in his life, what it was to enter a room not as the person trying to be seen, but as a small, useful figure beside someone the room had been waiting for. He was astonished to discover a relief. He did not want to ever walk into a room any other way again. Outside on 62nd Street, a thin, cold rain had begun to fall. The photographers had mostly given up and gone home. Of the ones who were left, none of them got a clean shot of the couple leaving at 12:18 a.m. Not because the couple was hiding, exactly, but because the men coming out of the building in front of them and behind them were arranging themselves, politely, in the way that made certain kinds of photographs simply not happen. By the time the cameras understood what they were looking at, the Voss car was pulling away from the curb, and Elena was looking out the window at the rain, and Marcus was looking at her, and neither of them was speaking. They did not speak, in fact, the whole way home. In the apartment, Elena took off her shoes in the front hall, the way she always had, and set them down in the exact place she always set them. She did not put on slippers. She walked, barefoot, across the cold marble to the kitchen. She poured herself a glass of water. She stood at the island, the same island where, 7 hours earlier, she had read his text twice, and she drank the water slowly, looking out at the East River. Marcus stood in the doorway. He did not come in. After a while, without turning, she said, "Go to bed, Marcus. It's been a long night. Are you coming?" "In a while." "Should I—" "Go to bed, Marcus." He went to bed. He lay in the dark for a long time. He heard her, much later, moving quietly around the apartment. He heard her in the kitchen. He heard her, once, laugh softly at something. The cat, maybe, or nothing. He heard her, finally, come into the bedroom and cross to her side of the bed in the dark and sit down on the edge of it, and after a while, lie down. She did not touch him. He did not touch her. For the first time in 7 years, Marcus lay in his own bed and understood that the woman beside him was a stranger he was, possibly, going to be allowed to meet. He fell asleep eventually, the way a man falls asleep at the bottom of a long flight of stairs he has just fallen down. Somewhere in the city, a phone in a man's breast pocket vibrated against his chest, and he took it out, and he read the message on the screen, and he nodded, once, and he put the phone away. In Zurich, it was morning. In Palermo, it was almost dawn. In New York, the rain was coming down harder now, and the last of the cars from the Ashbury Gala were pulling out of the narrow street and heading home, and the city, for the length of one breath, was as quiet as it ever got. In the penthouse over the river, Elena lay awake, staring at the ceiling, with her hand, beneath the sheet, closed loosely around the gold signet ring she had taken off. At last, before getting into bed, and which she had set on the nightstand on her side and then, some minutes later, picked up again, because she had discovered that she did not quite want, yet, to let it go. Marcus woke at 6:14. He did not wake because of an alarm. He woke because his body, trained by 11 years of running a company, had understood in its sleep that a very bad morning was coming and had decided to give him a few minutes of silence before it arrived. He lay in the half-dark for a moment, listening. The city outside was that pre-dawn blue that only happens in November, when the wet streets still haven't caught the sun. A garbage truck was working 3 blocks away, hissing and groaning. Closer than that, much closer, a kettle was beginning to whistle in his own kitchen. He turned his head on the pillow. Elena's side of the bed was empty. The sheet was pulled up, unwrinkled. The pillow showed a shallow dent. She had been there. She had not been there long. The signet ring, which he had seen her place on the nightstand, was gone. Marcus lay for another 30 seconds, looking at the empty place on the nightstand where the ring had been. Then he got up. He put on the gray cashmere robe his wife had bought him for his 40th birthday. A birthday he had, he remembered now, been too tired and too angry to enjoy because he had not been able to close a deal the week before and had decided to take it out on everyone around him. He went, barefoot, into the hall. The apartment smelled like coffee. Good coffee. The kind they had at home. Not the drip he usually made, too hot, too late in the morning, gulped in a rush before he left. This was coffee made slowly, from beans ground fresh. He followed the smell. In the kitchen, Elena was standing at the stove in her own robe, a dark blue, heavy, old-looking thing Marcus did not remember ever seeing before. Her hair was down. Her feet were bare. She was in front of a small stovetop espresso pot, mocha style, silver and dented. A pot Marcus had never, in 7 years, seen in his own kitchen. It was old. It had belonged to someone. She was watching it the way you watch an old friend. "Coffee?" she said without turning around. "Please." She poured 2 small cups. She brought them to the island. She set one in front of him and one at the place she usually sat, and she sat down. She did not look at him for a moment. She was looking at the cup in front of her. "I didn't sleep much," she said. "Me either." "I figured." They both took their first sip. The coffee was so good it actually stopped Marcus for a second. It was strong and clean and had a small bitter edge that opened up into something floral after you swallowed it. It was nothing like any coffee he had made in this apartment. He realized with an odd little pang that his wife knew how to make coffee this way and had apparently never done it for him because he had apparently never asked. Or, more honestly, because she had understood without being told that he would not notice. "This is good," he said. "It was my father's pot." "Oh." "It was in the apartment the whole time, Marcus, in a box in the back of the pantry. I used to take it out sometimes when you were traveling. I used it once a month, maybe. I'd sit here at 4 in the morning drinking this coffee, and I'd think, one day I'll make him some of this. I don't know if I ever would have, honestly. Before last night, I think I might have just kept it for myself. Marcus looked at the little dented pot. I would have liked to have had some of it, he said. Back then, if you'd offered. I know. I want you to know I would have. I know, Marcus. She took another sip. Daniel is coming at 7, she said. I know. Do you know why? Mr. Ashbury told me. Papers to sign. Yes. He told me to sign them without reading them. That is the correct instruction. I know. Are you going to? Marcus looked down into his cup. For a long moment, he did not answer. Then he said, Yes. Are you going to? And I need you to be very careful how you answer this, Marcus, because it is a serious question. Are you going to, an hour from now, feel like a small man who did what he was told? He thought about it. Yes, he said finally. Probably. Good. That is the honest answer. I was worried last night that you would come home from that party and decide somewhere between the car and the elevator that you had been through some kind of transformation, that you were a better person now, that you understood everything. If you had believed that, Marcus, if you had told me this morning that you were ready, I would have started packing my things today, because nobody who has been the man you have been is ready 12 hours later to be a man who isn't. The fact that you still feel small is how I know you were listening. He almost smiled. It was a crooked, unhappy smile. That's a hell of a compliment. It's the only kind you're getting for a while. I understand. Do you? I'm trying to. Good. She reached across the counter and, without looking at him, put her hand briefly over his. 2 seconds. 3. She took it back. It was not a romantic gesture. It was more like the gesture a sister makes to a brother who is about to take a test he has not studied for, and who, they both know, is going to pass or fail based on things neither of them can control anymore. One thing, she said. Yeah. Paloma. Marcus closed his eyes. Open your eyes, Marcus. He opened them. I am not going to ask you anything about her, Elena said. I do not want to know. Daniel will handle it. Mr. Ashbury has already handled the first part of it. I have been told last night by a person I trust that she will be in good hands and that she will not speak of you to anyone, and that in 6 months she will be in Milan or Paris or somewhere doing something else, and she will not think of you at all. I believe this person. I will not ask you, today or any other day, whether there have been others. I do not want that information. If there have been, I do not need to know. If there have not been, I do not need to be reassured. What I need, Marcus, is for there not to be another one, starting now, starting this morning. Can you give me that? Yes. Don't answer quickly. I'm not. I'm answering honestly. Yes, I can give you that. Because Marcus, and I want you to understand this, because I do not want there to be a conversation about this later. If there is another one, ever, I will not argue with you about it. I will not cry. I will not ask for couples therapy. I will send Daniel to your office with a second set of papers, and by the end of that week you will not work at Voss Industries anymore, and you will not live in this apartment anymore, and you and I will never see each other again. Not out of cruelty, out of efficiency. I have, somewhere in me, a great capacity for forgiveness, but I am telling you tonight, this morning, that it is being spent almost entirely on last night. There will not be much of it left for something new. Do you understand what I am saying? Lagan Uansan. Yes. Say it back to me. If I do that again, you will not fight with me. You will just leave, fast, clean, and I will lose everything. Yes. I understand. Good. She picked up her cup. She drank the last of her coffee. She set the cup down. Daniel is coming at 7. Go shower. Put on the gray suit, not the blue. The white shirt with the small collar. The plain tie. The black shoes. No cufflinks. You are going to look, today, like a man who has been told something very serious, and who is taking it seriously, and who is not trying to impress anyone. Do you understand? Yes. Good. Go. He went. In the shower, he let the water run very hot for a long time. He stood under it with his forehead against the tile. At some point, without deciding to, he began to cry. It was a short, bad cry, more like a hiccup than grief. It was over in 30 seconds. He did not know when it was finished exactly what it had been for. He suspected, been crying for the first time about a great many things. His father, who had died when he was 28 and had left him a company he had not been ready for. His mother, who had spent his whole life trying to convince him he was more than he was, and who had made him believe her badly. His brother, whom he had not spoken to in 4 years over money. Elena, whom he had never looked at properly. And himself, whom he had looked at too much and too kindly for far too long. He finished crying. He washed his face. He got out. He put on the gray suit, the white shirt, the plain tie, the black shoes. He did not put on cufflinks. He looked at himself in the mirror. The man looking back at him was, he thought, for the first time in a while, a man he could stand to be in a room with. At 6:58, the doorman rang up to announce that a Mr. Hurst was on the way up, with 2 other gentlemen. At 7:02, the front door of the apartment opened and Daniel came in, carrying a leather portfolio, followed by a slim man in his early 30s whom Marcus did not recognize, and an older man with gray at his temples whom he also did not recognize. They all knew, Marcus noted, exactly where to hang their coats. Elena, fully dressed now in a plain black sweater and gray trousers, met them in the foyer. She did not greet them exactly. She looked at them. The 2 men Marcus did not know bowed their heads, half an inch each, the way he had seen people do at the gala. "Signora," the older one said. "Gabrielle, it is an honor. Please, you knew me when I was 9. You used to put coins behind my ear." The older man smiled briefly. It was a fond, sad smile. "You remember." "I remember everything, Gabrielle." She turned to the younger one. "And you must be Alessandro." "Yes, signora." "Your father spoke of you often. He was very proud of you. I am sorry for your loss." "Thank you, signora." Marcus stood by the kitchen door, watching this exchange with the growing, uncomfortable sense that he was seeing the beginning of a business relationship that predated his marriage by several decades, and that, for the first time in his life, he was not at the center of a meeting in his own home. It was a strange feeling. It was not, to his surprise, a bad one. It was simply accurate. "Daniel," Elena said, "would you like coffee?" "Please, Mrs. Voss." "Elena is fine, Daniel." "Elena." She made coffee, real coffee, from the dented pot, enough for all 5 of them. She served it herself. Nobody offered to help. Nobody sat down. They stood around the island in the kitchen, holding small cups, and Marcus understood, looking at them, that this was not a formal meeting, not yet, but a kind of ritual, a small quiet observance, the way people gather in a kitchen before a funeral. When the coffee was gone, Elena led them to the dining room. She did not sit at the head of the table. She sat on one side with Gabriel on her right and Alessandro on her left. Daniel sat across from her. He opened the portfolio. He took out a thick stack of documents. Marcus, without needing to be told, sat at the end of the table opposite his wife. He understood, in a small, clean way, that this was where he belonged. Not at the head, but at the foot, and that, for the first year or 2 at least, until he earned otherwise, this was where he was going to sit. Daniel looked at him. "Marcus." "Daniel, I have a stack of documents here. I'm going to slide them across, one at a time. I'm going to tell you, briefly, what each one does. I'm not going to ask you if you understand. You do not need to understand. You need only to trust your wife. If you do, you sign. If you don't, you don't, and we will get up from this table and Alessandro will drive me home, and we will not be back. That is the shape of this morning. Is that agreeable?" Marcus looked at Elena. Elena did not look at him. She was looking at a spot on the wood of the table, about 8 inches in front of her, where someone, years ago, had set a hot dish down without a trivet. She was, Marcus understood, letting him have this moment alone. "Yes," he said. "It's agreeable." "Good." Daniel slid the first document across. "This is an assignment of voting proxy. It transfers your voting rights at the next shareholder meeting. And by the terms of paragraph 4, at every shareholder meeting for the next 18 months, to a trust established under the laws of Liechtenstein, the beneficiary of which is your wife. It does not affect your economic interest in your shares. You still own them. You still get the dividends. You still get the capital appreciation. You simply do not vote them. Your wife votes them on your behalf. Marcus signed. This is the formation document for a new entity, Voss Family Holdings LP. It will serve as the parent of your current operating company. Your wife is the general partner. You are a limited partner, along with any children you may have. The general partner controls all operating decisions. The limited partners receive distributions per the formula in Schedule A, which, I will note, is more generous to you than the current arrangement. Marcus signed. This is a shareholders' agreement amending the cap table. It reflects the transfer, effective Monday, of approximately 42% of the outstanding shares of Voss Industries from various offshore entities to the trust described in the first document. Your wife is the trust's beneficial owner. She is now, as of Monday morning, the single largest shareholder of your father's company. You remain the second largest, with approximately 29%. The board will be informed on Monday afternoon. Marcus signed. This is a revised employment agreement. It keeps you as CEO. It specifies a base salary and bonus structure that is comparable to what you have now. It contains a morals clause, the text of which I would draw your attention to in paragraph 9, but which, per your wife's instructions, I am not asking you to read. The morals clause is enforceable by the board, which is to say, effective Monday, by your wife. Any violation results in immediate termination for cause. No severance. Marcus, for a half-second, paused. Then he signed. This is a post-nuptial agreement. It supersedes the prenuptial agreement you signed in 2018. It provides, in the event of divorce initiated by either party, that your wife retains 100% of all shares, assets, and interests in Voss Industries, Voss Family Holdings, and any subsidiaries, regardless of fault. You retain your personal assets acquired before the marriage, which, I will remind you, are modest. You do not get this apartment. You do not get the house in Litchfield. You do not get the cars. There is a small alimony provision, which, again, at her instruction, I have kept deliberately generous, and which you will find at paragraph 18. If you are ever divorced, Marcus, you will not be poor, but you will not be rich. You will, approximately, be comfortable. I would call it dignified. Do you understand? Marcus nodded. I need a yes. Yes, I understand. Sign, please. He signed. Daniel slid the last document across. This one was much shorter, only a single page. This, Daniel said, is not a legal document. It is a letter. You will sign the bottom. The text is what it is. Your wife wrote it. I have read it. It is, well, you read it. Marcus looked down at the page. It was handwritten in Elena's handwriting, which he realized, seen only a handful of times in 7 years. The handwriting was small and clean and forward slanting. Marcus, you did not earn what I have done for you this week. You did not earn what I have decided to do for you next week or next year. You did not earn the name you carry, and you did not earn the company you inherited, and you did not earn the woman you married. I think most men, if they were honest, would admit the same about the things they have. That is a hard thing to look at. I'm not going to make you look at it every day, but I'm going to ask you to look at it once. This letter is that once. If you sign the bottom of this page, you are telling me, not in words, but in something more binding than words, that you understand you have been, until now, a very lucky man who mistook his luck for his virtue. You're telling me that you are prepared, starting today, to begin the slow work of becoming someone whose virtue is closer to the size of his luck. You are telling me that you will not confuse this process with penance. You will not confuse it with punishment. You will not confuse it with performance. It is none of those things. It is only the work. I will help you where I can. I will not do it for you. I will not reward you for doing it. I will not, for a long time, maybe not ever, tell you that I am proud of you. That is not my job, and I will not take it on. What I will do, if you sign this page, is stay. Yours, whatever that turns out to mean, Elena. Marcus's hand, holding the pen, was shaking. He set the pen down for a moment. He took a breath. He picked the pen back up. He signed. He pushed the page across. Elena picked it up. She read it once, slowly. She did not cry. She did not smile. She folded it into thirds. She put it in the breast pocket of her sweater. She looked up at Daniel. Is that everything? Yes, Elena. Thank you. Gabriel. Alessandro. Gabriel stood. He buttoned his jacket. Alessandro did the same. They bowed to Elena. They did not bow to Marcus, but they gave him each a small nod, which was more than they had given him when they walked in. It was something, Signora, Gabriel said, if you will permit me. Yes, Gabriel. Your father, he said, used to say that a day like this one was the day he was most afraid of. He used to say that he had spent his whole life trying to build a world in which you would never have to wear his ring. I am sorry, Signora, that we did not succeed in that. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Gabriel, she said, my father was a wise man, but he was wrong about one thing. Signora, he thought that a ring like this was a burden. He carried it that way because for him it was. But I have been carrying it for 24 hours now, and I am starting to think, for me, it might be something different. I think, Gabriel, that a ring is only a burden if you did not choose it. My father did not choose his. His father gave it to him, and he wore it because he had to. I chose mine. I took it out of a box I had kept in a closet for 7 years. I put it on myself. Nobody gave it to me. I gave it to myself. That is a different thing. Do you understand? Gabriel looked at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. I understand, Signora. Tell the others. Yes, Signora. Tell them I am not my father. Tell them I am not returning to his house. Tell them that I wear his ring because it is a tool I will use when I need it, and not a throne I have climbed onto. Tell them that I will expect from each of them the same courtesy my father received, no more, no less, and that the debts my father extended to each of them will be honored in the spirit in which he extended them, and not a hair further. Tell them especially that my marriage is not a seat at my father's table. Tell them my husband is mine, and that anyone who attempts to use him against me or to reach me through him will answer to me in a way that will not be pleasant. Can you tell them that, Gabriel? I can tell them, Signora. Good. She stood. The men stood. She walked them to the door. At the door, Daniel paused. Elena, he said. Yes, Daniel? I have been your husband's lawyer for 6 years. I know. I would like, if it is acceptable to you, to be your lawyer as well, going forward, in all of this. Elena looked at him. It was a long, weighing look. Daniel, she said, you are a careful man. You are a discreet man. You have always been fair with my husband, even when it would have been easier for you not to be. I have watched you over the years more closely than you knew. I have on 2 occasions considered asking you to come work for me instead of him. I did not, because it would have been an unkindness to him. I'm going to accept your offer, Daniel. I'm going to accept it with the understanding that your first loyalty, from this morning, is to me. My husband will be your client for a certain number of things, at which your loyalty to him will be real. For all other things, your loyalty is to me. If this is ever confusing to you, you will ask me, and I will tell you which list that thing is on. Do you accept? I accept, Elena. Good. Go home. Sleep. I'll see you Monday. They left. The door closed behind them. Elena stood for a moment with her hand on the knob. Her back was to Marcus in the hall. After about 10 seconds, she leaned her forehead against the door. She did not move for perhaps 30 seconds. Marcus did not go to her. He did not speak. He stood in the dining room doorway, and he watched her, and he understood, with a new, painful clarity, that one of the things he had not previously understood about his wife, because he had not previously wanted to, was that almost everything she did cost her something, and that the price was paid in private, and that for 7 years she had been paying the price of being small in this apartment every night while he slept, and that for the rest of her life now she was going to be paying the price of not being small, and that one of the small kindnesses he could offer her, starting this morning, was to leave her alone for the 30 seconds she needed after each of these transactions. He turned and went back into the kitchen. He washed the coffee cups by hand, all 5 of them. He dried them with a clean towel. He put them away in the cupboard. He did not know where 4 of them went exactly. He guessed. He hoped she would not mind. When he came back out, she was already in the living room, on the couch, with her legs folded under her and a book in her lap. She was not reading. She was just looking at the book. He sat down in the armchair across from her. Elena. Thank you. She looked up. For what exactly? For signing me up for a life I didn't pick, and which is probably better for me than the one I did. Her mouth did a small, unexpected thing. It was almost a smile. You're welcome, Marcus. Can I ask you one question? One. The people in that room last night, the ones who came up to you, the old Japanese man, Andre, Father Kyo, Pietro, are they going to be in our life now? Elena thought about it. Some of them, not all. Which ones? That's 2 questions. Sorry. It's all right. She closed the book. She set it beside her. Some of them will be in our life because I want them to be. Pietro, Mr. Ashbury, 1 or 2 others. These are people I have been close to since I was a child, and whom I have been missing for 7 years, and whom I would like now to be allowed to see again. They will come to dinner. They will send cards at Christmas. They will be in a certain sense family. You will come to know them. You will, I think, come to like them in time. They are not the people you imagine them to be. They are old men, mostly, who have done difficult things and who are very tired, and who are, in their own way, trying to be good for the last part of their lives. They will be kind to you because they are kind to me, and because now we are married, and because my father is in the room whenever we speak, even though he is dead. Do you understand? I think so. The others, the ones you do not need to meet, will not be in our life in the way you are thinking of it. They will be in our life the way the electrical grid is in our life. They will be there, providing something, and you will almost never see them. And the only time you will notice them is when something goes wrong, which, I intend, will not happen often. You do not need to worry about them. You do not need to wonder about them. If you ever have a question, you will ask me, and I will answer honestly. I will not keep secrets from you, Marcus. That part, the part where I was a secret, is over. I am not going to become a new kind of secret. I am going to be with you from this morning, very, very visible, whether you like it or not. I like it, Marcus said. I think I like it. We'll see. She looked at him, really looked. It was the first long, steady look she had given him since the terrace. Marcus? Yeah. I want to say one thing. I'm only going to say it once. I want you to take it very seriously, and I do not want you to bring it up again, ever, unless I bring it up first. Okay? She took a breath. I don't know if I am ever going to love you. Marcus felt it go into him like a needle. He did not flinch. He sat very still. I have been thinking about this, Elena said, since about 4 o'clock this morning. I have been sitting on the kitchen floor, drinking my father's coffee, trying to decide whether I should say this or not. I have decided I have to say it, because if I don't, you will spend the next year looking at me across a dinner table trying to decide whether I love you, and you will drive yourself insane, and you will do something stupid, and then we will have to have an even worse conversation. I want to save both of us that conversation. So I am telling you now. I don't know. I don't know, Marcus. It is possible. It is not impossible. I liked you once, and under the liking there was a thing that could have become more if we had both worked on it. We did not work on it. I do not know if that thing is still there. If it is, I will find it, in time. And I will tell you when I find it. If it is not, I will tell you that too. But I'm not going to perform love for you, Marcus, not anymore. I performed for you for 7 years. I am not doing it again. You are going to have to live with a wife who, for the next however long, is trying very hard to be honest about what she feels, and who may, for a while, feel mostly friendship. If that is a thing you can accept, we will keep going. If it is not, if you need from a wife the thing you thought you had, you need to tell me now, and I will not be angry, and we will unwind this quietly. But I'm not, Marcus, going to pretend. I don't have it in me to pretend anymore. Do you understand? Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Elena, he said softly, I think, if I'm honest, I don't think I've ever loved you either. She lifted her eyebrows a quarter of an inch. She had not been expecting that. I think, Marcus said, I have been in love with the idea of having a wife who made my life look a certain way. I think I was in love with the pictures we took at Christmas. I think I was in love with the way you sat at dinner with my mother. I think I was in love with the way your voice sounded when you said my name in front of my friends. I don't think any of that was you. I don't think I know you well enough to love you. I don't think I ever let myself. I think I was afraid that if I let myself know you, I would have to let you know me, and I didn't want to be known, because I didn't think I would hold up to being known. He swallowed. So I think what you're telling me is fair. And I think, for my part, I would like, if you'll let me, to try to actually get to know you over the next while, without expecting anything, without thinking of it as winning you back, just meeting you, seeing who my wife actually is, and letting you see me too, to the extent I'm not too embarrassed to show you. And if, at the end of some period of that, we find that we do love each other, that would be a lot more than I deserve. And if we don't, I think, Elena, I would still be grateful for the getting to know you, for the coffee in the morning, for whatever friendship you can stand to give me. I think I would rather have a real friend in you than a fake wife. I think I just realized that saying it. Elena's eyes went wet. She did not let the tears fall. She turned her face slightly and blinked them back, and when she turned it back, it was dry. All right, Marcus, she said. All right. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the morning had come on. The river was beginning to turn slowly, from gray to that pale blue-silver color it got when the sun finally caught it. Somewhere in the apartment, a phone vibrated, briefly, and was quiet again. Neither of them moved to find it. At some point, Elena said, I want to see my mother's grave. Marcus turned his head. Your mother is in Palermo, next to my father. I have not been to either of them in 9 years. I didn't know. No, you didn't. Would you like me to come with you? She considered him. Not the first time, she said. The first time I have to go alone. But the second time, if you want to, yes. Next spring, maybe. If we are still doing this, you and I, in the spring, I'd like that. Don't decide now. Wait and see how it goes. I've decided, Elena. Marcus. I know. Wait and see. He smiled a little. But for my own records, I've decided. She almost smiled back. Noted, she said. But 3 days later, on Monday morning, the story broke in the financial press. It broke small at first. A single paragraph in a premium newsletter, then a slightly longer piece on a wire service. Then, by mid-afternoon, a headline on the front page of the journal's web edition. The Serrano Group had withdrawn, without public explanation, from its position in Voss Industries. 42% of the company's outstanding shares had been quietly transferred, over the course of 48 hours, to a trust incorporated in Liechtenstein under a name nobody recognized. The trust had issued no statement. Its representative, when contacted, had declined to comment other than to say that the trust was a long-term holder, which in financial language meant, don't call us again. By the end of the day, 2 things had happened that Marcus had not, in 7 years of running the company, ever seen happen. The stock went up 4% on the news. And the phone in his office, which usually rang from about 8 a.m. until about 7 p.m., with a steady low-grade hum of demands and complaints and minor emergencies, did not ring at all. He sat at his desk for most of the afternoon and did nothing. He did not need to do anything. Someone, somewhere, had decided that Marcus Voss was no longer a problem, and the absence of that decision being renewed hour by hour for the rest of his life was going to be, he understood, the most valuable inheritance he had ever received. At 4:30, his assistant buzzed. Mrs. Voss was in the lobby. Marcus stood up. He straightened his tie. He went downstairs. Elena was in the lobby in a camel coat, her hair down, holding a small bag from a bakery he recognized. The French one on Lexington, the one she always went to when she wanted to treat herself. I thought we'd have coffee, she said. Across the street, there's a new place. I haven't tried it. Okay. They crossed the street. They sat in the window of a small plain coffee shop Marcus had walked past 1,000 times without noticing. She ordered for both of them, without asking, and she was right about what he wanted. They sat in the window for an hour, and they did not talk about the company, or her father, or the gala, or any of it. She told him about a book she was reading. He told her about a small, stupid problem he was having with a middle manager in the accounting department. A real problem, not one of the ones he usually talked about, which were the ones he'd solved already, and was bragging about having solved. She listened. She asked 2 questions. One of them showed him the answer. He laughed out loud because he had been wrestling with it for a week, and because it had in fact been obvious. You're good at this, he said. At what? This. The noticing. The asking. I didn't know you were good at this. You didn't ask. No, he said. I didn't. He took a sip of his coffee. Elena. Yes. I think I'm going to be all right. She looked at him. She thought about it. I think, Marcus, she said, you might be. I think you might be. The sun was almost down. The light through the window was the gold that New York gets in the second week of November when the weather has finally turned. The coffee was good, but not as good as the coffee at home. Somewhere across the country, in an office in Los Angeles, a lawyer was finalizing an arrangement involving a young Brazilian woman who had, quietly and gratefully, signed the last of a series of documents and was about to board a flight to Milan. Somewhere in Zurich, a man named Domenico was drinking grappa with 3 other men, and they were laughing at something, and one of them was saying, in Italian, "She has her father in her, you know," and another was saying, "No, Nico, she has only herself in her. That is the whole point." And the third was not saying anything, only smiling, because he had known Elena when she was 10 years old, and he had always thought so. In the coffee shop in Manhattan, Marcus reached across the little table, and he put his hand lightly on the back of his wife's hand, and he left it there for perhaps 5 seconds, and she did not pull it away. And then he took it back, and they went home. Together, the ordinary way, in a taxi, sitting on the same side of the back seat, looking out at the city they had lived in together for 7 years, and which, for the first time, belonged, in some small real sense, to both of them. The first month was the hardest, because nothing visibly happened, and Marcus had spent his whole adult life mistaking visible happenings for real ones. He got up every morning at 5:45, which was 30 minutes earlier than he had ever gotten up. He made the coffee himself, in the dented mocha pot, badly at first, then less badly. He had ruined 6 pots worth before Elena, without comment, had come into the kitchen one morning, watched him for about 40 seconds, taken the pot out of his hand, tapped the grounds flat with her thumb, instead of pressing them down, shown him the heat she wanted, and handed it back. That had been the whole lesson. The next morning, his coffee was almost right. The morning after that, it was right. She did not tell him it was right. She simply drank it without making a face, and when she finished, she put her cup in the sink and said, "Thank you." That was the praise. It was more than he had expected and less than he had wanted, and for the first time in his life he understood the distance between the two and why it mattered. He went to the office. He sat at his desk. The phone did not ring the way it used to. People still called, but they called about work. The hectic, performative, day-long negotiation he had previously mistaken for his job. The endless jockeying, the small, cruel games, the dinners whose only purpose was to make some other man feel smaller than Marcus, all of that, he noticed, had simply evaporated. He had not decided to stop. Other people had decided to stop, on his behalf. Men who had, 3 months ago, been constantly testing him were suddenly polite. Not warm. Polite. The tests had moved somewhere else. He did not have the illusion that he had passed them. He understood, with a small private ache, that he had been taken off the list of men worth testing because someone, somewhere, had passed a note explaining that his wife was now the point of contact for anything interesting, and that Marcus himself was, at best, a kind of receptionist in his own building. It stung. It stung for about 3 weeks. Then, to his surprise, it stopped stinging because he had begun to notice, for the first time, that his actual job, the running of a company, was an interesting thing to do when you weren't constantly fighting for your life at it. He had budgets to look at. He had a factory in Ohio that nobody had visited in 4 years. He had a division head in Houston who was drinking too much and needed, not to be fired, but to be helped. Marcus had never, in 11 years, helped anyone at Voss Industries. He helped the division head in Houston. Quietly. He sent him to a place in Tucson for 6 weeks on paid leave, with the understanding that the job would be there if the man wanted it when he came back. The man came back. He was, for the rest of his career, one of the most loyal lieutenants Marcus had, and Marcus never, once, brought up Tucson. At home, things moved even more slowly. Elena did not touch him for the first 6 weeks. She was not cold. She was not avoiding him. She simply did not touch him. She sat across from him at dinner. She sat on the other end of the couch in the evenings. She said goodnight from her side of the bed, back turned, in a voice that was kind but closed. Marcus, who had previously understood physical affection as a thing a man received from his wife whenever he wanted it, learned what it was to have to wait. He learned what it was to not ask. He learned, most importantly, what it was to stop measuring a marriage by the frequency of its physical contact and to start measuring it by the smaller, harder, less exciting metrics of whether the two people in it could sit quietly in the same room for an hour without one of them wanting to be somewhere else. For the first time in his life, he did not want to be somewhere else. The change came, when it came, unannounced. They had been watching, of all things, a nature documentary, late on a Sunday in December. There was a scene with some kind of small desert fox walking alone across an enormous expanse of pale sand. The fox was not in distress. It was simply walking. The narrator said something in a low voice about how these animals spent most of their lives alone, by choice, and came together only rarely and briefly, and the brevity of the meetings was, in its own way, the reason the meetings mattered. Elena, sitting on her end of the couch, was quiet for a moment. Then she reached across the space between them and put her hand on top of Marcus's hand, and she left it there. And she did not look at him, and he did not look at her, and neither of them said anything. She kept her hand there for the rest of the documentary, perhaps 40 minutes. She took it back when she went to the kitchen to get a glass of water, and she did not put it back when she returned, and she never, later, mentioned it. But Marcus understood, sitting alone on the couch while she was in the kitchen, that something in his life had just shifted, silently, and that he had not earned the shift so much as he had, for 40 minutes, not ruined it. He understood that that was going to be, for a long time, his job. Not to earn, not to win, just to not ruin. He got better at it. The Ashbury people began around Christmas to have them over for small dinners. Not the gala kind. Smaller. 6 at a table. 8 at most. Elena would wear something simple. Marcus would wear the gray suit or the charcoal one, and no cufflinks. And he would sit next to people whose names, when Daniel wrote them down for him on the ride over, took up several lines each. He listened. He laughed when things were funny, and not when they weren't. He was asked, at one such dinner, by a woman he later learned had been a deputy director of a government agency. He was not going to say out loud, even in his own head, what he thought about a certain piece of legislation that was being debated in Washington. He almost gave her the kind of answer Marcus Voss, 6 months ago, would have given. Confident, general, performatively concerned, ultimately empty. He did not. He stopped himself. He said instead, "I don't know, ma'am, I haven't read it closely. I have opinions about the things I've read closely, and I try not to have opinions about the things I haven't." There was a small silence. The woman looked at him for a long beat. Then she said to Elena across the table, "My dear, he's going to be all right." Elena's eyes, flicking briefly to his, said nothing, but her mouth, almost imperceptibly, did a small pleased thing, and Marcus, for the rest of the evening, felt lighter than he had in years. Pietro came to dinner at the apartment once, in January. He arrived with a bottle of wine from a vineyard Marcus had never heard of, and a small paper-wrapped package for Elena which, when she opened it in the kitchen later, turned out to be a piece of stained glass from a chapel in Calabria, about the size of a hand, salvaged after a renovation and kept by Pietro in a drawer for 40 years. Pietro did not explain why he had decided to give it to her now. Elena did not ask. She set the piece of stained glass on the window over the sink, where the morning light would hit it, and she stood in front of it for a while after Pietro left, not moving, not crying, just looking at the colors on the tile floor. Marcus watched her from the doorway and did not interrupt, and understood, watching her, that he was now in the business of not interrupting, and that he was slowly getting good at it. Pietro, before he left, had taken Marcus's hand in both of his, the way he had taken Elena's at the gala, that first night. And he had looked at Marcus for a long time without speaking, and then he had said in a quiet voice, "Mr. Voss, she has chosen to keep you. Do not be the second man in this family who makes her regret a choice. Do you understand me?" And Marcus had said, "Yes, sir." And Pietro had said, "Good boy," and patted his hand and gone, and it was the single strangest and most formative 30 seconds of Marcus's middle-aged life. In February, a man Marcus did not know called the office and asked, very politely, to be connected to Mrs. Voss. The assistant, who had been trained by now in these matters, said that she would need to take a message. The man gave his name, which Marcus, when he heard it, did not recognize. He passed the name along to Elena that night. She was at the kitchen island, chopping an onion. She stopped. She put down the knife. "Say it again," she said. "Benedetto. Benedetto something. Favretto, maybe?" "Favretto." That's it. Elena looked at the knife on the cutting board for a long moment. Then she wiped her hands on a dish towel. She walked to the drawer in the front hall, the drawer Marcus had never, in 7 years, opened. And she took out a phone Marcus had not seen before, a cheap one, flip style, the kind his grandmother had once owned. She took it to the living room. She dialed a number from memory. She spoke, in Italian, for about 4 minutes in a voice that was pleasant but exactly level. Marcus did not understand the words. He understood the cadence. It was the cadence of a person declining an offer with absolute finality. At one point she laughed, not a warm laugh, a short, dry one, and said something that, even without understanding the language, Marcus could hear was a warning. Then she said goodbye, politely, and hung up, and came back to the kitchen, and picked up the knife, and began chopping the onion again, exactly where she had left off. "Who was that, Elena?" "A man who thought he could use my father's name to get a favor from me. He has now been informed that he cannot." Is that going to be a problem? For him? Is it going to be a problem for us? Elena, for a moment, stopped chopping. She looked at him. "Marcus," she said, "one of the things I need you to understand is that there will, for the rest of my life, be men who call me with names. There will be perhaps 3 or 4 a year. It is not a crisis. It is a chore. It is for me the equivalent of emptying the mousetrap. I will do it when it needs doing. It does not require conversation. It does not require you to worry about me. I am telling you who called tonight because I promised you there would be no more secrets. And I am a person who keeps her promises. I am not telling you because I want you to worry. I'm not worrying. I'm asking." "Good. That is the right thing to do. You may always ask, I will always answer, but I need you, Marcus, to trust me to empty the trap. Can you do that?" "I can do that." "Good." She went back to the onion. Marcus, who had never made his wife dinner in his life, asked her if she wanted him to do something. She said, "Chop the garlic. Don't crush it with the knife. Slice it thin." He sliced the garlic thin, which took him much longer than it should have, and she did not correct him. And when the meal was done, a simple pasta, olive oil, garlic, a little chili, a little lemon zest, they ate it at the kitchen island, standing up, which Marcus had never done with her before, and which, he discovered, was the way she had eaten when she lived alone in her studio in the village, and had not eaten since. "It's good," he said. "It is simple," she said. "I think those might be the same thing." She looked at him for a moment, and her mouth did the small, pleased thing again, and she said, "Maybe, Marcus, maybe." The Ashbury Gala, it turned out, had been an invitation-only event with an invitation-only sequel. In the second week of March, a smaller envelope, heavier paper, arrived at the apartment. It was a private event at Pietro's country house in the Hudson Valley. It was understood, in the way these things were understood, that the Voss couple was expected. It was understood, in the way these things were also understood, that this would be the first time Elena and Marcus appeared in public together, as a couple, since the gala. The first appearance had been hers, alone, with him as furniture. This one would be different. Elena read the invitation twice. She handed it to Marcus. She said, "We're going." "Okay. I want to tell you some things about this, so you're not surprised." "Okay." "At the gala," she said, "you walked in first with a Brazilian model, and I walked in late, alone. At this thing, in the Hudson Valley, we are going to walk in together. That means, Marcus, listen, that means the people there will read us the whole evening as a unit. They will look for places in that unit where there is a weakness. They are not doing this to be cruel. They are doing it the way children pick at a scab. They cannot help themselves. If they find a weakness, they will remember it. If they do not, they will stop looking." The way to not have a weakness, Marcus, is not to pretend not to have one. It is to decide in advance that a particular thing is simply not a subject anymore. Do you understand what I am saying? I think so. You're saying, Yichapo, we decide before we go what we are, and we are that, and we don't debate it while we're there. Yes. Okay, what are we? She thought about it for a while. We are two people, she said, who have been married for 7 years, who are friends, who are rebuilding something that was broken, who respect each other, who are not. Tonight, going to perform an affection we do not yet have, but who are also not going to apologize for the fact that the affection is still being built. We are honest people, Marcus. That is the quality I want the room to take away. Not that we are in love, not that we are happy, honest. If we are honest, and if we are, between us kind, the room will not find a weakness. Because the only weakness in a couple is the lie they are telling about themselves, and we are not going to tell any lies tonight. Can you do that? I can do that? Good. The night of Pietro's dinner, Marcus put on the charcoal suit and the plain shirt. He did not this time put on cufflinks. He had not worn cufflinks since the morning after the gala, and he had, quietly, given his whole collection to an auction house and directed the proceeds to a literacy foundation his mother had been on the board of. Elena, when they met in the foyer, was wearing a dark green dress, long, modest, a color he had not seen her wear in years. She had a thin gold chain at her throat. Her hair was down. She looked, Marcus thought, almost like the Elena he had married, except for her eyes, which had a depth in them he had never in 7 years noticed, and which he understood now had been there the whole time. You look beautiful, he said, carefully, because he did not want to say it wrong. Thank you, Marcus. I mean it, not as flattery. I mean it. I know you mean it. That is why I said thank you. The car took them up the Taconic. They did not speak much. At some point, about halfway there, Elena reached over and took his hand and held it on the seat between them. And she did this without looking at him, and he did this without looking at her. And when they arrived at Pietro's house an hour later, she did not take her hand back until the car had stopped and the driver had opened the door. Pietro's house was not large. It was a stone farmhouse, maybe 200 years old, set back from a narrow road among leafless March apple trees. There were perhaps 15 cars parked on the gravel. There were no photographers. The door was opened by a woman in her 60s in a plain black dress, who embraced Elena without speaking and shook Marcus's hand firmly and said, "Welcome, Mr. Voss. My name is Rosa. I have known your wife since she was 8, and Marcus, who previously would have made some small charming comment at this point, simply said, Thank you for having us, Mrs. Rosa. I am glad to be here." The dinner was long. There were, Marcus counted, 14 people at the table. He recognized 4 of them from the gala. 2 of the others he recognized from photographs. The rest were strangers to him, and would, he suspected, mostly remain so. Pietro sat at the head. Elena sat on his right. Marcus was seated on Elena's other side. Not at the foot, not in a place of importance, just beside her, where a husband sat at a family dinner. He understood, looking at the seating, that this was the whole statement. He was not being presented as a principal. He was being presented as hers. And this, he had come to understand, was in these rooms an honor. His wife was a principal. He was the spouse of a principal. There were men in this room who would have cut off a finger to sit in his chair. He understood, looking at them, that some of them, perhaps, noticed him for the first time not with contempt, but with something like envy. And he understood, even more importantly, that he did not care what they thought of him anymore. He cared what his wife thought of him. That was all. The shrinking of his circle of concern from the entire world to a single person was, he was beginning to realize, the single greatest gift the last 4 months had given him. At some point, late in the evening, Pietro tapped the side of his glass with a fork. Once. Not to demand silence, just to ask for it. The table gave it to him immediately. He stood up. "Friends," he said, in English, for the benefit, Marcus understood, of the 3 or 4 at the table who did not speak Italian. "I am too old for a speech. I will be brief. I want to say, tonight, in front of you, because you are the people I would want to say it in front of, that I had the honor, this winter, of meeting someone I had not met before." He looked at Marcus. Marcus in his chair went completely still. "Mr. Voss," Pietro said, 4 months ago, I did not think well of you. I want to say that honestly, because I am an old man and I do not have time to be polite anymore. I am sorry, Elena. I thought my friend Giancarlo's daughter had made a mistake. I see now, watching a man I did not yet know. I was mistaking, as old men often do, the silence of an unfinished man for the silence of an empty one. Those are not the same thing. An empty man is empty. An unfinished man is the man who has not yet been asked the right question, and who, when he is asked, may surprise you. You, Mr. Voss, have surprised me. I do not say this lightly. I have been surprised in my life perhaps 3 times. This is the third. I tell you this in front of these witnesses because I want it on the record, as it were, that Pietro, and here he paused, and he almost smiled. Pietro, who is not a sentimental man, was wrong about Mr. Voss, and is pleased tonight to say so. The table was very quiet. To my Elena, Pietro said, lifting his glass. To her husband. May they live in truth. May they live, where possible, in peace. And may they, in whatever time is given to them, find out together what the two of them can become. Which I think, friends, which I think now, may be quite a lot. He drank. The table drank. Marcus realized too late that his eyes were wet. He blinked. He lifted his own glass, and he drank, and he set the glass down. And Elena's hand, under the table, found his, and she squeezed it, once, very hard, and then she let go, and she did not say anything. But when he looked at her, her eyes were wet too, and she did not look away. And for the first time in their marriage, for 2 whole seconds, they looked at each other in front of other people and did not hide anything from each other in the looking. It was the closest Marcus had ever come to being loved by her. It was not yet love, but it was the room love lived in, and he had tonight been let into the room. Spring came. It came the way spring comes in New York, badly, in fits and starts, with a snowstorm on April 3rd and a heat wave on April 10th and a week of perfect cool sunshine after that, which made everyone in the city forget, for a moment, why they put up with any of it. The trees on Central Park West started to do that green thing they do. Elena, who had not gone to Palermo in the end, because her calendar had filled in ways she had not expected, decided she would go in June. She asked Marcus if he still wanted to come. He said yes. She said, then come. And that was the whole planning of a trip to Sicily, to visit her parents' graves, which they made over dinner in about 90 seconds. In May, Voss Industries had its annual shareholder meeting. It was, by tradition, held in a small auditorium in Midtown. Marcus stood at the podium. Elena sat in the front row. She was not listed as an officer. She was not introduced. She sat in a plain gray suit, and she took notes, and when Marcus's presentation was finished, she asked 2 questions, from the floor, as a shareholder, and the answers to her questions, which Marcus gave from the podium, were the clearest and most honest answers Marcus had ever given in a public forum. The stock, that week, went up. 2 analysts who had been covering the company for years wrote notes saying that Voss Industries had apparently discovered what candor was, and that this was a welcome development. Marcus printed out one of the notes and put it in his drawer at home. He did not show it to Elena. He did not need her to know. He just liked knowing it was there. On a Saturday in early June, the day before they were to fly to Palermo, Elena came out onto the terrace of the apartment, the same terrace Marcus had sat on, shaking, the first night, though that had been a different terrace, Ashbury's terrace, and this was their own. And she sat down next to him in the second of the 2 metal chairs they had bought together at a flea market in April, and she said, without preamble, I think I love you, Marcus. Marcus did not say anything for a moment. He was watching a bird on the railing. The bird did not seem bothered by either of them. Okay, he said, finally. That's your response. Yes. Okay. What do you want me to say, Elena? She laughed. The short, surprised laugh that was, by now, one of his favorite sounds in the world. I don't know, she said. I had not thought that far. I was going to say, he said, slowly, looking at the bird, that I think I have loved you for, I don't know, a while, 3 months, 4. But I was not going to say it until you said it first, because I did not want you to feel like you had to match me. So, okay, is That's my response. Okay, Elena, I'm glad. I'm more glad than I can say. I don't want to make a big thing of it because I don't want to scare it. That's all I meant. Elena did not speak for a while. She was looking at the bird too. That was the right thing to say, Marcus. I thought about it. I could tell. Is this something we tell people, or is this something we keep? I think we keep it, she said, for a while. I think love is a quiet thing. We've spent a lot of our marriage doing loud things. I would like to do something quiet with you for a while, if that is all right. That is all right. The bird flew away. Somewhere down on the street, a cab honked at another cab. An airplane crossed the sky, very high up, leaving a long white line. Elena reached over in the metal chair, and she put her hand on Marcus's forearm, and she left it there, and he did not move, and for a while they did not say anything. After a long time, Elena said, "You know what I keep thinking?" "What?" "I keep thinking, the worst thing you ever did to me, Marcus, turned out to be the best thing you ever did for me." That's a strange sentence. I know, but think about it. If you had not, that night, texted me that text, if you had, even once, out of pity or out of ego, brought me to one of those parties before last November, I would have stayed small. I was in the habit. I would have kept doing it. I would have sat next to you in the car, and I would have worn the colors you chose, and I would have been your wife the way you wanted a wife. And I would have died in my 70s as a woman nobody had ever seen properly, and I would have told myself the whole time that it was my choice. And it would have been my choice, but it would not have been the right choice. You, by not inviting me, forced me to finally invite myself. You gave me the small, bad insult I needed to remember that I did not actually have to keep being insulted. That is the gift, Marcus. That is the gift I am, now, slowly, starting to be able to thank you for. Not the marriage, not the apartment, not even the loving, which is new and which may or may not last. The gift is that the night you tried hardest to make me disappear was the night I had to choose, finally, to come back. I don't know if I would have chosen otherwise. And I mean this, Marcus, and I want you to know I mean this. I am grateful to the man who sent that text. I am not grateful to him in the sense that I forgive him, but I am grateful to him in the sense that he did, by being cruel, give me permission to be kind to myself. That is a strange kind of debt. I am going to owe it to you for the rest of my life, whether we stay married or not. Marcus thought for a long time. Elena, he said finally. Yes. I don't deserve that thanks. I want you to know I know that. I know you know that, but I accept it. Because I think if I pretend I don't accept it, I'm making you do even more of the work. And I've decided I'm going to stop making you do the work. So, thank you for being kind enough to take the thing I did for the wrong reason and turning it into something you could use. That's on you, not on me. But I'm grateful to be in a marriage with a person who can do that with her life, instead of just being buried by it. I think that is the thing I admire about you most. Not any of the family stuff, not the power, not the dress, the thing where you decided not to be a victim of me. I don't know how you did it. I don't know if I could have done it, but I want you to know, Elena. I want you to know I see it, and I see you, and I don't think I ever will stop seeing you now. Not because I'm trying, because once you see somebody, I think you can't close your eyes again. Elena's eyes were wet for the second time in their marriage in front of him. She did not let the tears fall this time either, but she did not turn her head away. Marcus? Yeah. Don't close your eyes. I won't. Ever. I won't. Promise me. I promise. That is the only thing I am ever going to ask you to promise me. Do you understand? I understand. Good. She took her hand back. She stood up. She stretched, the way a person stretches after sitting in one position too long. She said, "We should pack. The flight is at 10 tomorrow, and you always forget your passport." I don't always forget my passport. You always forget your passport, Marcus. It is part of you. I love you. Pack your passport. Okay. She went inside. He sat on the terrace for another few minutes by himself. The sun was low. The river, far below, had gone silver again. the way it did on the good evenings. The bird, or a different bird, came back and landed on the railing. Marcus did not move. The bird looked at him for a long time. Then it flew away. He thought about his father, who had died too young, and whom Marcus had, for most of his adult life, been trying to impress, even though his father was no longer there to be impressed. He thought about his mother, whom he was going to call from Palermo, and to whom he was going to say a thing he had not said to her in 20 years, which was that he was sorry for how tired he had made her in his 20s and 30s, and that he was trying now to be a son she did not have to manage. He thought about Daniel, who had said to him in a sitting room 4 months ago that women like Elena did not love men like him. And he thought, without triumph, with only a small, quiet, private pleasure, that Daniel had been wrong, and that maybe nobody knew in advance what kind of woman loved what kind of man, because people were not kinds, they were people, and they surprised each other sometimes. And the surprises were the best part. He thought about the man he had been in the back of the Bentley on the way to the gala, one hand on Paloma's thigh, one hand on his phone, not thinking about his wife. And he did not, for the first time in months, hate that man. He felt something closer to sorrow for him. The man in the Bentley had not known what he was about to lose. He had not known what he was about to be given. The sorrow was not because he had become someone else. The sorrow was because he remembered now how frightened and empty that man had been every day without knowing it. And he wished he could have told him that night in the Bentley that everything was about to get harder. And then, after the hard part, everything was going to get better than he had ever let himself imagine. He wished he could have told him, trust the woman at home. Sit next to her. You do not yet know who she is. You do not yet know who you are. The two of you together are going to be, well, you will see. He stood up from the metal chair. He went inside. He found his passport in the drawer in the front hall, where Elena had put it 3 days ago so he would not lose it. He held it in his hand for a moment. He looked at the small photograph of himself from 4 years ago, and he saw in the eyes of the man in the picture something a little bit mean around the mouth, and he thought, that's the old Marcus. And he smiled, not unkindly, at the old Marcus, and he put the passport in his jacket pocket. In the bedroom, Elena was packing. She had one of her small, neat carry-on cases open on the bed, and she was folding a sweater into it with the efficiency of a woman who had packed for travel more often and more quickly than most people he had ever met. He stood in the doorway and watched her for a while. What? She said without turning. Nothing. Just looking. Come help. He came in. He helped. He was bad at folding. She did not correct him. She just, after he was done, refolded the shirt he had folded wrong and put it in the case and smiled, a very small smile, only with the corner of her mouth, and kept packing. He thought, watching her, this is going to be the rest of my life. This, right here. Her folding things I have folded wrong. Her not saying anything about it. Me knowing, and her knowing I know. Me being grateful. This and tomorrow and the week after and the year after and the year after that until one of us goes. This is it. This is the whole thing. It was a strange thought to have at 50 in a bedroom over a half-packed suitcase with an ordinary woman who was also an extraordinary one and who had chosen, for reasons that were entirely her own, not to leave him when leaving him would have been the easier thing. It was, he thought, the best thought he had ever had. There is in any story like this one a small private message the storyteller hopes will travel with it. Not a moral, because nobody likes a moral, but a small thing, small enough to carry. The small thing here is this. The quietest person in the room is almost never the least powerful one. Sometimes they are choosing to be quiet. Sometimes they are resting. Sometimes they are, for their own reasons, letting you believe something about them that is convenient to you and costs them nothing to allow. And sometimes on a night you did not see coming, they decide, without warning, to stand up and stop letting you believe it. When that happens, a great many things change at once, and most of them cannot be changed back. The only choice you get to make on that kind of night is whether you are going to be the person who walks toward them or the person who walks away. There is no middle choice. Pretending there is its own kind of leaving. The people who walk toward someone on that kind of night are sometimes surprised to discover that they are being walked toward too. That is the secret the gala did not teach Marcus Voss, but the months after it did. The people we dismiss are often the same people who, quietly, for years, have been deciding whether to dismiss us back. Some of them, most of them, for their own reasons, decide not to. Those decisions are not rewards we have earned. They are gifts, given to us freely, by people whose reasons for giving them have very little to do with us and everything to do with who they are choosing to be. The only correct response to that kind of gift is gratitude, and the kind of gratitude that doesn't loudly announce itself, and the slow, private, unglamorous work of becoming, over time, a little closer to the kind of person it would be reasonable to have given such a gift to. Some people never do that work. They take the gift and they forget about it, and the gift, quietly, without fanfare, is withdrawn, and they spend the rest of their lives wondering what happened. Marcus Voss did the work. He did not do it perfectly. He did not do it because he was a perfect man, and he was not. He remained, until the end of his life, a little vain, a little prone to the small mean thing around his mouth, a little quick to want to be the center of a room he was no longer the center of. But he did the work enough. Enough so that the gift was not withdrawn. Enough so that, in June, his wife let him stand beside her at her parents' graves in Palermo, under a tree her father had planted when she was born, and she took his hand while she spoke to her mother, in Italian, quietly, for about 10 minutes, and when she was done, she turned to him and translated none of it, and he did not ask her to. And they walked back down the hill together and got in the car and drove back to the small hotel. And the next morning they flew home, and the life they were now living together continued, uneventfully, which is to say well, for a great many years. The black dress, the midnight one, she kept in the closet at the back of the apartment, not hidden now, just hung, with her other clothes. She did not wear it often, she did not need to. The room, as she had put it once to Marcus, remembers. And a woman who has once been recognized by a room like that does not need to be recognized again. She only needs to remember for herself that she was. That memory, Elena Voss discovered, is the quietest and most durable kind of power there is. It does not require an audience. It does not require repetition. It does not even, in the end, require the dress. It only requires that the woman who owns it agrees, from now on, never to pretend again that she does not. Marcus, for his part, kept the passport photograph, the one with the mean thing around the mouth. He kept it long after the passport had expired. He put it in a drawer in his nightstand, and every now and then, on a night when he was feeling particularly pleased with himself, he would take it out and look at it, and he would remember. Not the man in the photograph exactly, but the text the man had sent, at 5:42 p.m., on a November afternoon, to a woman whose name he had thought he knew. Don't wait up. Big night. Won't be home. He had been, for one evening, the most arrogant man in Manhattan, and that arrogance had, in its way, saved his life. Not because he deserved to be saved, but because it had finally been loud enough to wake up the person in the next room, who had, at long last, decided she was done being quiet. He had been lucky. He knew it. He did not forget it. And that, in the end, was enough. He put the photograph back in the drawer. He closed the drawer. He went into the kitchen, where his wife was making coffee, and he said good morning, and she said good morning. And they drank the coffee together, and the day began, and it was an ordinary day, and those, he had come to understand, were the ones that were worth getting right.